That's okay, I'll change it.
Cool in here. You got a jacket if you want. Oh, you got one. It was good. Had a hot baby all over me all day.
Good evening. I want to call to order this meeting of the Wendell Board of Commissioners and welcome you all. Thank you for being here with us tonight. We have a nice group, a lot of great things we're going to talk about, and thank you for being here. Our Pledge of Allegiance tonight is being led by Carson Lane. Carson, if you can come up here. She's a 5th grade student at Carver Elementary School here in Wendell. She continues to work hard in all of her subjects and perseveres even when concepts challenge her. Carson is friendly and compassionate and models Carver pride behavior while at school. Outside of school, Carson excels in dance and enjoys spending time volunteering in her community. Her teachers are Mrs. Turner and Mrs. Wise. They're here also tonight, and they are very proud of her and all of her accomplishments, and they said they look forward to seeing what the future holds for you. I'm sure it'll be great. So I congratulate you on being recognized tonight, being selected by your teacher and students. It's a really big honor. I'm very proud of you. So if you want to lead us in the Pledge of Allegiance.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you very much. You can have a seat with your parents. Our invocation tonight from the Wendell Council of Churches is from Errol Briggerman of the Wendell Baptist Church. Thank you so much for being here tonight.
Thank you. If I could, real quick.
Sure.
This coming Sunday night, so the Sunday before, was the 19th? Before Thanksgiving, we have a community sing that we do every year of the Council of Churches. There'll be probably 6 or 7 churches, and we'll do it at the Presbyterian Church this year. It'll be at 7 o'clock. There's refreshments after, but there's some really cool choirs and some really cool groups. So if you all have time to go, it's a great time. It's a great Sunday evening.
Thank you
Okay?
so much.
We do it. We've been doing it every year for several years, but it gets better every year. All right? Let's pray. Lord, thank you for this day. Thank you, Lord, for watching over us. Thank you, Lord, how this community is so willing to give, to do. I mean, we've had hurricanes and people have stepped up. We've done tremendous food drives this year, and everyone has been so faithful and charitable in what they do and helping us to take care of our 3 food pantries. We just ask you, Lord, to watch over this evening, as we know our council members have such difficult decisions to make at times. We just ask you to bless them, and that the direction of our city as it is growing, and we just ask you, Lord, to for your blessing throughout this time. For all these things we ask in your blessed name. Amen.
Thank you again so much, Errol. Is there any adjustment to the agenda?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the agenda.
All right, we have a motion to approve the agenda. All in favor?
Aye.
And there was no one signed up tonight for public comment. Do we have a motion to approve the consent agenda?
So moved.
All in favor? Item number 4 is recognition of Carver Elementary School teachers, Miss Melissa Turner and Miss Amber Wise. If you ladies can come up here. Ms. Turner and Ms. Wise were nominated by their principal and their school to be recognized here tonight by the Town of Wendell Board of Commissioners. Ms. Turner teaches English and Social Studies. Ms. Wise teaches Math and Science. We just wanted to thank you so much for everything that you do for our children here in Wendell, and tell you how very much you are appreciated for that. And thank you for that. We really appreciate it. And I wanted to ask each of you if there's anything in particular that's significant about your school day or that's going on at school that you'd like to share with us.
Well, I guess I can start.
Will you get to the microphone?
Oh, sure. I'm Melissa Turner, and I've been teaching at Carver since 2001, and that's been 17 years, and I know that because my son just turned 17 yesterday. Our 5th grade students are working hard to go to our annual trip to Washington, D.C., so you're going to see them out in the community. They're fundraising right now. They're selling candy bars. We were at the Harvest Festival, and we just recently had our hot dog fundraiser, so the kids are working hard. We get to go to the Capitol building. We're going to Arlington. We're going to lay a wreath at Arlington again. And in getting ready, the kids are working really hard to learn about the history and how Washington came to be. So if anybody wants to come out and share stories, if you've been to Washington or whatever, the kids would love to hear it. They're excited about going, and they're researching right now.
That'll be a great trip. Thank you.
All right, one thing that I'm excited about is the use of technology we've been able to incorporate in science. Our students are going on Google tours to visit places around the world. They've been using hyperdocs and different interactive activities, and I'm actually going to be a part of a science core leadership team in Wake County to look at a needs assessment for the science curriculum and what we can do to help our students do better in science.
That's awesome. Congratulations for that, too. Well, thank you, ladies, both.
Thank you.
Thank you very much. Item number 5 is a public hearing to a request submitted by Smith Edwards LLC to rezone 115.74 acres of property located along South Hollybrook Road to residential for conditional district. Mr. Bergmark.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this is a conditional district, request in R4. There's actually one small correction on the acreage. It's 116.19, just something that was picked up, I think, after the agenda was put together.
Okay.
So tonight, you're being asked to hold a public hearing on this conditional district request and consider taking action. So that action could consist of continuing this hearing to a future date, if needed, for more discussion, of approving the attached ordinance as written, or approving the attached ordinance with certain modifications based on the discussion and deliberations. In the case of a conditional district, all the conditions have to be agreed upon by both the town and the applicant. Part of this area is outside of our current jurisdiction. It would be brought into the jurisdiction with the annexation request. However, the rezoning is being listed first because we want to make sure we get to that point of mutual acceptance. And if we do get to that point, then we would hold on the action on this and switch to the annexation, take action on the annexation, so it's all in our jurisdiction, and then come back and take action on the rezoning. The applicant, again, is Smith Edwards LLC. We do have representatives present tonight. There's 4 PIN numbers associated with this. I'll quickly read them for the record. 1783921299, 1793020954, 1783947008, and that's actually only a portion of that, and 1783837560. So this conditional district consists of 339 single-family lots, an amenity site with a clubhouse and a pool, as well as a proposed pump station. You had included, as an attachment, the master plan for this development, which was just included as a link due to its size. It's proposed to be broken into 5 phases, so each one could conceivably have its own final development plan or construction drawings. The purpose of this conditional district is to allow for alternative means of land development, creative trade-offs. So again, that's why I said we have to mutually agree upon it. And the provisions that they lay out, where different than the UDO, those differences would prevail, and that's laid out either as a set condition, or sometimes it can be as, if it's clearly identified on the development plan, like in the case of phasing. The majority of this property is currently located within our ETJ in a zone of residential agriculture. That zone often serves as a holding zone until someone comes forward with a development proposal. There is a small section that's also within the Wake County's R30 district. Annexation, of course, must be approved by the Wendell Board of Commissioners prior to the approval action of the CD, as I kind of went over at the beginning. And there is 3.81 acres of a tract that has frontage along Selma Road that has been excluded from this request. Just wanted to, for both the conditional district and the annexation requests. So those are the tracts. Again, that northernmost extension of Selma Road, that little triangular piece has actually been cut off. But otherwise, these are the parcels. They're identified by those PIN numbers. You can see the surrounding area, that light or pale green is the residential agriculture. So most of the surrounding area is zoned in that holding zone, the RA. The light yellow on the northwest side is part of the Groves of Deerfield subdivision and is zoned R3. Well, I can't get that to work, but on the northwest on the corner. And again, they're looking to rezone it to an R4 residential conditional district. And the R4 conditional district would have a base lot size of 6,000 square feet. There are some conditions included with their request that are included within your staff report. Some of these are really more clarifications. Other things are items that they're either offering something or asking for a concession. One of the items deals with the side setback. They're asking to apply a 5-foot minimum side setback rather than having a 20% total lot width. So rather than having 10% on each side being the side setback, they're asking just for a flat number of 5 feet. In the R4, the typical lot width is 50 feet, so which would normally come to 5 feet. Staff's preference is really just to have flat numbers rather than having to calculate for each lot, whether it's 52 feet or 54 feet, just having that flat number. So we are in favor of that request. The next item deals with the parking ratio on the amenity site. Again, this is a clarification dealing with how many parking spaces would be associated based on the pool area that's being included. Again, this isn't really a request, it's more just clarification, and we are in favor of that request. They are showing 54 parking spaces with that amenity site. The third item is another clarification that approval of the conditional district is contingent upon formal acceptance and annexation of the subject parcels into the town of Wendell. That's really just something that the applicant wanted to make sure it was clear as part of this process. And that absent annexation, absent of the acceptance of the annexation, the conditional district would not be approved. We wouldn't really be able to approve it without the annexation, but they wanted that included in there, so I included that in there. One item that could be seen as an improvement that's being offered is to apply a 55-foot minimum lot width rather than 50-foot that would apply in the R4, so a slightly larger lot width requirement. Staff has no objection to that. Providing a minimum of 2,500 square feet of open space per dwelling rather than our required 1,750 square feet of open space per dwelling. I do want to point out that per our regulations, up to half of the total open space can be located in areas of special flood hazard, including the floodplain. And so in their case, 57.9% of the passive open space provided is located within undeveloped property. Some of that floodplain, some of that is outside of that within riparian buffers. However, per their master plan, they are providing a little over 5 acres of improved park space where only 3.4 acres is required. So they are providing more than what we require. I just wanted to kind of quantify that with floodplain versus, or riparian buffer versus not, so you knew how much of an offering that was. As part of their phasing plan, the clubhouse amenity site, they're showing that coming in after phase 3. So phases 1 through 3 constitute 213 of the 339 proposed lots. The clubhouse represents the only active open space, so we have passive, and then we have improved park space, which has some minimal, it has to be grassed and maintained, and have access and, benches and trash cans, but otherwise it doesn't have to be an active structured recreational site. And then you have the active. So this represents the only active site. Staff in this case is recommending that the amenity site be completed prior to phase 3. So phases 1 and 2 constitute 150 of the 339. So our feeling is just that if you're waiting until after 213 have gone in, there's a lot of people living there before they get the only active site to be provided. And staff did have 2 conditions that we're recommending be added to this proposal, which are 7 and 8 in our report. So 7, that the proposed pump station be screened from view from lot 293. So this is, and I'll bring up a better picture of this in a moment. So this is where the pump station would be. I want to make sure it's adequately screened from the lots that are adjacent to it. They did show a type B buffer on their plan against one kind of the lot immediately touching it, but there was no provided buffer being shown on the other side of the lot. So we were proposing that a type A buffer, which is somewhat more substantial than a type B, it's only 5 feet wider, but it's more plantings, be applied along the 2 sides facing lots 293 and 294. So rather than just along that eastern side of this lot, and I don't know why this is not working, but on that bottom corner, that's where the pump station would be. And we just want to make sure that both the long side and the shorter side are buffered for those neighboring lots. And finally, the other suggested or recommended condition that staff has included is that a high visibility crosswalk and pedestrian crossing sign be installed crossing South Hollybrook Road in adherence with any required DOT standards for the crossing design. Since that amenity site is on the north side of Hollybrook Road, we wanted to make sure that the residents on the south side of the development also have a safe means of accessing it. And so we want to make sure that was included as a condition. There is language in our requirements that talks about open space being conveniently accessible to all residents of the neighborhood. So in staff's opinion, these improvements, at a minimum, are needed for pedestrian safety to access that amenity. And also, I might have skipped over the fact that we were recommending some pedestrian crossing signs, so signs to alert you that there's a crossing ahead. I'm going to stop for a moment and see if I can get this map to pull up. Part of the reason why I had printed copies provided for you is the resolution and clarity on this has been not ideal in the past, but just to give you a sense and the audience a sense of what we're looking at. Again, this is divided on the north side and the south side by South Hollybrook Road. So what you're seeing on the screen now is the section of the development that would be on the north side of Hollybrook Road. And you can see kind of the lot layout and the street layout. And you can kind of make out where the stream crossing and the pond is. So the amenity site would kind of be against that pond in the center of the screen there, with the lots running through it. And you can see a utility line crossing, kind of just going from east to west across as well. And then on the south side of the road, you can see kind of, again, the lot layout, which kind of leads back, and the floodplain and the creek are on kind of the western portion of this lot. So it limits our access points some, but they are providing future access to future development where you see some of the roads stub out on the edge of the properties. If you can see, one of the concerns with this that first came up and that we kind of worked on how to come to a creative solution was emergency access. What if there was some kind of natural disaster or an event that required you to evacuate these homes? the majority of the lots out of these two sides is actually on this south side, but there was only one way connecting it to South Hollybrook Road. So if you see, and I wish I could point to it using the screen, but the functionality is not working right now. If you can see where there's a cul-de-sac, so you see the two long roads that are going towards Hollybrook Road, where it has that match line. One of them ends in kind of a little cul-de-sac of sorts. What they proposed was to have an emergency access way. It would be a pedestrian crossing, so it'd be paved, and there'd be bollards up. So pedestrians could use it as a pedestrian crossing to South Hollybrook Road into this development. But in the event of an emergency, the fire department and the police department could lower those bollards, and it could act as a secondary way in and out of this development in case that the only other way was for some reason blocked by an event. And this is something that DOT has dealt with this type of item before. The details of exactly where those bollards would be located and how they'd be accessed and things of those lines and marked would be flushed out when the final development plan for this was done. But it is marked with a call out, and the location is identified in these plans. I'm not going to go through all of these, but I did want to make it known that there were some still just technical corrections to be made. These are just things that during any development review we'll identify, and the applicants will correct, things like where they were showing a side setback where it really should have been a rear setback, or things where they're supposed to have rear buffering between two lots, and they showed it during part of it, but didn't maybe show all of it. So this is just a list of some items of technical corrections of that nature that would need to be made. So I did want to just kind of have it for the record, but it's not something that's considered a condition where they're asking for something to go outside of our normal regulations. This is just something that would come up during any development review. So we have shared these with the applicant and expect these to be corrected as part of the approval and review process. So again, the conditional districts allows for applicants to ask for some exemptions for certain standards, and the intent is that those exemptions are being offset by some other improvements where they're giving us something above and beyond what we would normally require. In this case, the master development plan really seeks to gain some additional density in exchange for extra open space and an amenity center that exceeds the town's minimum requirements. I spoke briefly about the open space. Again, they're required to dedicate a minimum of 13.7 acres of open space with a minimum of 3.4 acres of park space. Of those 3.4, just over an acre is supposed to be designed for active recreation space. They're proposing to dedicate 3 acres of park space within that club amenity tract, plus an additional approximately a little over 2 acres of park space around the pond for a pedestrian connection between the club tract and the residential road to the north, for a total of a little over 5.25 acres. And the active recreational open space requirement would be satisfied by the pool and the clubhouse. One of the concerns that had previously been brought up was the absence of park space on the south side of South Hollybrook Road, and this is something that came up during the planning board review. So in response to that, the applicant did revise their plans to show 10,000 square feet of park space between lot 317. So just basically took an area on the south side of Hollybrook Road to carve out a little area for a park space there as well, next to one of their stormwater management devices. And I spoke to the amount of open space that was within kind of either floodplain or riparian buffer, being around 58%. Most of that's actually within riparian buffers, 53% with a little under 5% being under the floodplain. And in response to some of our inquiries, the applicant has stated that there wouldn't be any dry detention structures included within their stormwater management areas, because those don't get credit as open space. Public water and sewer would be extended at the time of development as part of this. Per our water allocation policy, they have filled out their water allocation kind of score sheet, and based on the offerings, amenities that they have, they would score 58 points, which is more than the 50 points required. They're also would be having a new pump station that I think I had mentioned previously on south side of, south end of this development, that would be oversized based on what their development strictly would require per Raleigh's requirements. I did talk to John Sorrell with City of Raleigh about this to just kind of confirm what the applicant had told me, and he did confirm that yes, it would be oversized. He said in the case of when you're having pump stations rather than gravity lines, it's a little bit harder to make it fully fit the entire basin. You can only oversize the structures so far on one site or at one time, but then you also leave room for additional capacity that could be added later, but you can't have it, I think, running prior to the other aspects of the project or the other projects coming in. You can't fully have that be designed for the entire basin until more comes in. The final design elements of that would be continued to be worked on as we go into the construction drawings, which in the case of conditional districts is referred to as the final development plan. And he had talked about emailing me a little bit more detailed information on that. I haven't gotten that yet, but he did confirm what the applicant had kind of said within their application. As I mentioned, the plans for the engineering and engineering for the pump station are still under review and would require Corp HUD approval. Per our RTO and collective street plan, the applicant would be responsible for some minor widening along South Hollybeck Road in order for it to meet our minor collector. It's a two-lane undivided road, mainly widening to add for wide shoulders that could be a future bike lane. So it would involve 3.5 feet of additional right-of-way dedication. They also, based on the size of this development, the transportation impact assessment that they were required to do has been submitted and reviewed by DOT, and at this time, the only improvement called for by DOT's review of the TIA is a left turn lane turning onto 231, or sorry, turning from 231 onto South Hollybeck Road. During the TRC review, most of their comments was really more minor technical things. I mentioned that the main concern was that ingress egress in the event of emergency. So again, they have addressed that primary concern that came out of the TRC discussions and addressed other more minor concerns that would just need to be corrections going into their construction drawings. So as with any rezoning request, including conditional districts, we look at the comprehensive plan. What does it call for this area? How does it fit, and how does the applicant's proposal fit into what our comp plan calls for? This area is identified as a controlled growth sector, S4. There's a whole list of appropriate land uses within the S4, which includes, could be neighborhood serving commercial, civic uses, resident, an array of different residential housing types. So this proposal certainly fits within that, the allowed and appropriate land uses within the S4 district. You can kind of see the arrows kind of highlighting the area that this falls within. So in staff's opinion, the requested conditional district is consistent with the recommended uses and development types outlined in the Wendell Comprehensive Land Use Plan for that S4 sector. The planning board, when they met, voted unanimously to approve the proposed conditional district with 2 amendments to the plan as presented to them. The second recommendation has subsequently been incorporated into developers' plans. The first one was only kind of partially brought in. So the 2 amendments were to require a type A buffer between the pump station site and the adjacent residential lots. Again, right now that's really more, it's shown as a type B buffer. And again, the second one was to require a type B buffer along the eastern boundary of the clubhouse lot. So that lot adjoins an existing lot with a home on it, and so just wanted to have that show that as being buffered from that existing residence, and they have made that change. And everybody was present at this meeting, so it was a full house, and they voted unanimously in favor of those changes. So that's what I have in terms of a staff report. I'd be happy to address, if there's any questions following the hearing, any follow-up questions, I'd be happy to address those, or if you want to start with some questions, then go into the hearing.
Do y'all have any questions? We'll go ahead and ask. Okay.
Mr. Bergmark, when it comes to these street cross sections, there's basically 2 main ones aside from what we're talking about on Hollybrook. Well, there's a 52-foot right-of-way and a 64-foot right-of-way cross-section.
Mm-hmm.
The 52-foot right-of-way, if I'm looking at it correctly, shows no street parking. What I'm seeing is 2 travel lanes with nobody parked on the side of the road, whereas on the 64-foot right-of-way, there's street parking on both sides. Am I reading that correctly?
There is marked parking areas shown for the 60-foot, 4-foot wide. There's no marked parking spaces shown for the 52-foot wide right-of-way. I believe that the UDO allows for parking on one side in that kind of a scenario, but there's no marked parking spaces.
So how do people know which side to park on?
Whichever side's not already parked on. That's
In the absence of
yeah.
parking, people are gonna park on both sides, which is plainly seen in other neighborhoods and other narrow streets around town. And I think this is something we've discussed quickly before, but egress, especially emergency ingress and egress through these narrower streets is much more difficult. And then it simply becomes, well, why are we parking in front of my house instead of parking in front of my neighbor's house? Or why can't I park in front of my house instead of in front of my neighbor's house? Well, the curb's not marked, and who's gonna enforce it? And so, my only question is can we come up with a way, if parking is only allowed on one side of the street, to make sure that people only park on one side of the street, or to make it easier for people to understand that parking is only allowed on one side of the street?
I'd be happy to look into that.
That also impacts the public works, trash collection, debris
mail.
removal, mail, all those things, so it is an issue. Any other questions for Mr. Bergmark? Okay.
And David, on the conditions that they proposed on number 6, when they had talked about the clubhouse amenities being constructed after phase 3, and the staff had recommended prior to phase 3, was there any discussion further on that?
There was discussion at the planning board meeting, so it is something that I brought up during the planning board meeting, that concern. Ultimately, the planning board did not end up changing the recommendation based on it. I'll briefly mention, and I'm sure the applicant will want to speak to that as well, but one of the things they did point out is, that they hoped to be able to do it before then. They wanted the flexibility to allow kind of the market to dictate when it came in to a certain degree. They also pointed out that the other Fred Smith subdivisions, their amenities are open to the residents. So basically, once you buy into a Fred Smith subdivision, you gain access to the other amenity sites wherever they may be at his other developments. So they also pointed that out. But ultimately, like I said, the planning board did not recommend changing it.
Okay, thank you.
Are there any other questions?
I have one. David, early on in the discussion, you mentioned 3.81 acres that was not, that was to be excluded from this request.
Mm-hmm.
What's the purpose of that?
So I actually jumped over, I had that highlighted better in the annexation report, so I jumped to that just to show that area. Frankly, I think they looked at it from a cost standpoint of what are they gaining from adding that. It's kind of a little bit of an awkward shape. They wouldn't get many lots out of it. It wouldn't add much to their overall neighborhood from their standpoint, and yet it would also bring in some additional costs of providing, access to that, providing improvements along Selma Road. So I think that's the main reason, but again, I'll let them respond to that as well.
Any other questions? I have one real quickly. The speed limit along Hollybrook, right along in there, gets up to 55. Is there gonna be some adjustment made through there with that? Especially with people crossing the street?
So when it's annexed in, I think by default, it would be reduced as we annex this into our corporate limits. Chief, do you have anything you can add to that?
Chief, could you come up to the mic, please?
Thank you, David. Yes, as a matter of 2 points, obviously it is a DOT street, which we would then dictate the speed limit, but by default, unless otherwise posted, it would be 35. I
Right.
think you look at the TIA and the loads that it would bring to it to make the determination as to whether it would be 35 or 45 right along in that area. You are correct, it currently, in the area the intersections would be in, it currently is 55.
Okay. Okay, thank you. Make sure it stays safe. Did you have a question, Commissioner Joyner?
This is on the proposed conditions, and I know you talked about the setback, but it seems like 2 of the 4 conditions, 1 and 4, seem to directly correlate with each other. Is that us attempting to fix something we don't like in the UDO, or is that?
No, the 4 was, they were looking for something that they could, offer, and when they moved it, initially they were debating over whether or not this should be an R3 conditional district or an R4 conditional district. And, if they were at R3, the normal size would be 60 feet, and so initially it was, the base was gonna be 60, and they were asking, hey, can we take that down to 55? That would really be able to help us out. When they decided to change it to the R4, some of those things that were originally things that they were asking for then became instead something that they could offer to give us 5 more feet than what the base district would require. So that's where number 4 came from. Number 1, I think that in that case, it was probably something that came out of discussions with staff. I'm not a big fan of the language of the 20% total. I mean, in application, it really becomes 10% on each side, unless you have an entire block where they're all side loaded, because otherwise you can't really switch back and forth. But if you designed it where your entire block was side loaded, you could have 0% on one side and then 20% on the other, and then that next one is 0%. But I've never actually seen someone try to do that. So I will say that for number 1, that was probably more based on staff's preference, and when it came to issuing building permits and things of that nature, it does make it easier if it's really just a flat number. But that didn't really relate to number 4.
But I read number 1 as, we'll give you a 5-foot buffer, and number 4 as, we're gonna increase the buffer by 5 feet. So I just was, that was more of a, do we have a problem with our process question than a specific. And the other piece, and I'll echo, I guess, your concerns on, phasing. I've now been on this board long enough to know how phasing projects work. And phase 2 and 3 sometimes don't become realities, which I'm completely fine with. But making sure that, whatever, if we don't get to phase 5 or 6, we have the infrastructure pieces in place is important to me, especially when that's, that active open space, because of the lack of other space, is central to this project. So I would hate some sort of consideration to know that that's going to happen is the biggest thing for me, and I don't really care how we know that, as long as we know it's going to happen.
Anything else? Do we need to hear from the applicant?
Certainly. Did we officially open the hearing prior to?
No, I usually do that after.
Okay.
After we hear from both sides.
Hello, Mayor, if I could interrupt, I would recommend you go ahead and open the hearing.
Okay, that's not the order y'all gave me things in, but all right. All right. Public hearing's now open. Proceed.
Town Council, Madam Mayor, thank you for a chance to speak to you. My name is Fred Smith. I live at 632 Marcellus Way, Clayton, North Carolina. First off, I want to thank David and his staff for the outstanding way they've worked with our team to meet their recommendations and a project that we believe will be an asset to the town of Wendell. Sherry and staff that we've worked with in the town manager's office. The Fred Smith Company is excited about building this community in Wendell. We are just down the road in Johnson County and Riverwood and in Clayton and Lionsgate, among other communities that we've built. Let me just assure you, I think there's always some concern about developers not building the amenities that they promise. I think we have a track record of delivering on our promises in every one of our communities. The amenity is fully built. We've never not built all the phases in our communities. Some we're still building on. The amenity in Hollybrook will be not limited to just the amenity there. The Fred Smith Sports Club is what will be the amenity, and every resident of Hollybrook will be entitled to all of the privileges that any resident in a Fred Smith Company community has, and that includes the ability to play 4 golf courses and the ability to use what will soon be 6 athletic clubs. And we do have residents that use amenities in other communities. And I'd be happy if anyone wants me to go into great detail about our amenities that we offer. So with that, let me just say that I'm happy to answer any questions that the council may have.
Are there any questions, gentlemen?
Mayor, at some point we need to know if the applicant is in agreement with the staff recommendations of those conditions.
I don't think there's any problem about agreeing with the staff. It's my understanding pretty much every requirement the staff has made, we've agreed to. You know, as far as the amenity is concerned, let me just say, our intention is to build the amenity before phase 1 opens. But there's a difference in what your intentions are and what you're legally obligated to do. So clearly, we always want to have whatever flexibility we have, but I can assure you, from a sales standpoint, from a ability to accelerate lot takedowns, all those other things are dependent upon amenities. All of our communities are amenity driven. That's what we do, that's what we offer. So to not build that amenity as soon as possible would be against what we've done in all our other communities. So that's our intent. Clearly, we want to have whatever flexibility because we don't know what the future holds and we don't know what the economy is going to do. But that's our intention. And whether it be phase 2 or 3 is after phase 2 or after phase 3 is virtually irrelevant to us.
I'll just say this, I certainly appreciate it, and this is one of those fun times where I am the most free market, let's bend the regulation, let's figure out the easiest way we can do something kind of guy. What I will say is that the amenity case is great, and if we were sitting in Briar Creek or I was sitting in Clayton, the amenity case is great. But the amenities, until this is built, on an amenity standpoint, those amenities are in another community, and the last thing I want people doing is leaving their house to go to another community and recreate there, because they'll spend their money there, they'll fill up their gas tanks there, they'll do a lot of other things there. While I appreciate once it's built out, that's a selling point for your community. Once there's the build out, that's a competitive advantage over the neighborhood just beside it, because that's something they won't have. But in the upfront portion of it, I just felt like I needed to highlight that we should make sure that we have as much of it planned and dates known as we possibly can. I understand the market dictates other things, but at least having general ideas is kind of feel like our responsibility.
Okay.
happy with the plan as long as there's a plan, and that's, I guess, the piece that I was asking for.
Anything else for the applicant? All right, would anyone, this is the opportunity for the public to speak for or against this, rezoning. If anyone's interested in speaking, they can step forward now. I need you to tell me your name and address, please.
Good evening. My name is David Arnold. This is my wife Judy. Our address is 1429 South Hollybrook Road. Our property abuts the proposed Meadows phase of this. And my wife is representing her father, James W. Green, whose property abuts the same thing on the west side. We had a couple of questions. You know, development is kind of something that's going to happen. But I guess, one, what happens if this development is sold before the process is all completed or even starts? Are the same requirements in place? And when the Meadows section of this was originally sold by Robert Price, there were restrictive covenants in his sale. And he had the foresight and the wisdom to protect his neighbors and the community and his family on Hollybrook Road by saying what type of buildings could be built, what size houses could be built to the east side of the branch, which runs north from the creek, from the pond, and what size houses can be built to the west of that branch. And we're concerned if those restrictive covenants will remain in place, and his wishes will be in place. There were some questions also about the shrubbery. I'm assuming from what has been said by the town and by the Planning Commission that the amount of foliage that's going to be in place around the houses and the streets is going to be exactly as it is on the plans. Is the water and sewer going to run all the way? Is there going to be a manhole at the end of Street A as it abuts the James W. Green property on the west side? Or is it going to stop off somewhere else? So for future reference, what is going to be there? And we've not seen anything about what were the proposed impacts of the government two government services and that had been projected by the developer, and we're concerned about that. We're concerned because we don't want to see a continuance of some of the things on the south side of Wendell as it keeps growing that way. You know, we'd like to see a little more upscale development going on instead of what we've seen coming out our way already. It's a concern for everyone out in that community, and not just in the Wake County part, but also in Johnston County as it goes on, and what is on the other side of 231, split by Johnston and Wake County, just at the line there. So we're trying to look into the future and see what is going to hold for us, and so we'd like to make sure that those things are addressed before anything else moves forward. Thank you.
Thank you.
Mayor, I can speak to a couple of those questions.
I was going to say, we need to hear from you.
As far as restrictive covenants go, they are not affected by the town's development approvals.
Okay.
They would remain in place, whatever they are. And if the property's sold, the development restrictions would remain in place. I can't answer the manhole question.
Okay, yeah. Okay. All right, anyone else? Mr. Bridgers?
I'm Shelton Bridgers, 402 North Pine Street here in Wendell. I believe this is the most ridiculous request that town board has ever had since I've been in Wendell. Wendell has been trying to upgrade the style and house that's been built. And then these two gentlemen come out with this thing of putting 10 and a half houses per acre on that land. Now, that's a whole lot of houses on an acre. An acre is about the size of a football field, and put 10 and a half houses out there. I believe this will be one of the hardest jobs y'all ever have to turn this down. But let me tell you, it needs turning down, because if you don't, it will set Wendell back 50 years in the style of houses that is built here. I recommend you turn it down and wish the guys you need to rezone it. You really need to rezone it from R30 to R40. Thank you.
Anyone else?
I'm Ray Hunter, I live at 205 Dogwood Trail in Wendell. As I understand it, on the south side development, there's only one entrance in and out. And with the provision that in the event of an emergency, the fire department will come and take down some items so they can go through a residential area to get in and out, I think that is ridiculous. I think with as many people as are going to be in the south side of that development, you certainly need one exit and one entrance, two different ways to get in and out of development for safety purposes. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Hi, I'm Becky Olson, 105 Angleview, and I butt up to I think it's the last section that they plan on building. We already have a problem with the traffic in Wendell, and when you bring in 300 plus houses and there's no room to widen the streets, I think that's gonna cause a big problem. I'm concerned about the water runoff, that'll be a problem. And buffering would be nice for the houses that are there now. I've been in Wendell for 30 years, and it's a nice, small town. And it's been a nice, small town. If they do need to develop, maybe they can be restricted on how many houses they can have instead of what they're asking for now. I just think it's too many. Our streets are already full with, for schools, and during rush hour, you can't even get off on, the main street. So I wish you guys would turn it down.
Thank you. Anyone else?
My name is Jason Love. I'm next door to her and next door to the rest of the property on that side south of Hollybrook. Kind of reiterating some of the things she said, there is a bit of watershed going over there, so I'm concerned how the neighborhood's going to handle that, as well as the buffer between our current property. How's it going to look? Obviously, it's going to be towards tenants and how they handle it now, but in addition, I have a bit of a concern on I think it's the open spaces at the very bottom, most southern. It actually touches up to Buffalo Creek. Well, if any of you guys get out there, it's pretty nice out there, and I'm kind of concerned how trashed it's going to get afterward. So I'm kind of concerned how this open space will be managed as far as more of a park or just a free-for-all, hey, if you want to go fishing, you can escape out there, kind of thing. The other thing, reiterate as well, was the amount of traffic that's going to come out of there. One person out of that household comes and goes to work every day. I don't see how our streets are going to be able to handle people heading towards Raleigh as it is. I understand there's a project, I've already seen the signs on widening Hollybrook, so looks like we have something in place, but getting, off of Hollybrook onto, West Gannon, or again towards the school, it's gonna be rather painful in the mornings. But anyway, I seriously doubt our, request for, some of these concerns is gonna hold up the process. I understand development, but, those are my big concerns, how is that space, open space gonna be used, as well as the buffer between some of the property that's already existing, how will we be impacted by those other people? I think that's all I have.
Thank you.
Hey, my name's Glenn Bridges, 894 Lions Club Road. I'd just like to say that, as Mr. Joyner referred, I think that growth is inevitable and it's coming to Wendell. It's the job of this board, the planning board, to try to protect the districts of different sizes and different kinds of houses and have a transitional zone between those. And I think that's something that this board should really consider before they approve this, and I guess that's all I need to say. Thank you.
I'm Warren Bridgers, 725 Selma Road. This is like the Bridgers party or whatever here tonight. I'd just like to, for the board, for everybody that's against this, to raise their hand out here I just want you to see how many people are against this. And these are the people that you see in Wendell. They're walking their dogs. You see them having coffee. You see them being in Wendell. They chose to be in Wendell. They've stayed. Some of us have been in Wendell all our lives. I've been on boards on Wendell. These people have been on these boards in Wendell. And how much do we get paid for it? Absolutely nothing. We did it because we love the town. And that's why we're here. And we love the small town part of it. I understand, as some of the others have said, growth is inevitable. But what's wrong with having an acre with a house on it? What's wrong with having, more open space? I mean, I understand we are here because we love the town. They're here to make a buck. Let's face it, have you ever seen any of this group in town sitting beside you, doing anything with you? It's just a buck to them. When they're gone and they've put these 3 million houses in town, I mean, we've got to deal with the traffic. We've got to deal with everything that comes with that. So instead of, let's stop and think about this. When I was on the town board or the planning board and the board of adjustment, surveys were sent out as to what do you think this town needs. I don't know when the last one of those has been, but it was restaurants, businesses. I don't think there was anywhere on the list that people said we need more starter homes. And I think this is a perfect time to say, okay, let's slow down on this. I mean, 10 houses per acre is a lot of houses. So I hope you will listen to all the people that have lived and worked and loved this town, and they all raise their hand, they're against this, and say, no, we don't want this. Thank you.
Anyone else? All right.
I have a question for David Bergmark. David, did the planning department look into how this development would affect traffic in the other areas of town, such as 3rd Street, Wendell Boulevard, all the way to Wendell Parkway? I'm assuming that's where the residents are going to go. I don't think they're escaping the lower tax rate in Johnston County. They're probably all working in Raleigh.
So that's part of the reason for the requirement for the transportation impact assessment, is to review the impacts on adjoining or nearby intersections. And like I said, based on the results of the TIA and DOT's review of that, it wasn't showing significant impacts on those roads. That's why the only turn lane it was showing to be required is in relation to this development was going to be on, Selma turning onto this, but they weren't showing any additional improvement requirements going on to 3rd Street or anything along those lines.
Any other questions?
David, I do have one question for you. On the north side of the development, am I seeing this correctly, that it kind of joins in with the, Groves of Deerfield?
Correct.
Okay. What are those homes? What is the zoning in that area?
Groves of Deerfield is zoned R3,
Okay.
residential 3, so it has a 10,000 square foot minimum lot size for R3.
And this one you said was 6,000?
This one would be 6,000.
All right. Thank you.
I did want to just, if you give me liberty, just to respond to a few things that were mentioned, some of the questions. There was questions about extending utility lines. Generally for water lines, Raleigh will require you to extend to the edge of your property. You know, occasionally there's some extenuating circumstances, but generally, you know, whatever the edge of your development is, you would extend to that edge of that development to allow for additional, you know, additional extension as development occurs on the next property over, so that the neighbor doesn't have to go and pull it through your land to get to theirs. There's been some references to 10.5 homes per acre. Again, this is really closer to 3 homes per acre. Granted, some of that's, you know, riparian buffer, so that would increase it some, although it still wouldn't get anywhere close to 10.5, so I'm not sure where that number is being derived. And then there was also, I think Jim might have partially responded to this, but a question about this rezoning would be tied to the land, so even if this developer walked away, these conditions would still be in place. Now, somebody new could come and ask to change this plan or to scrap this plan and rezone it just to a flat traditional rezoning that didn't have conditions. That's always a possibility, but the rezonings would stay. They're not tied to the applicant. There was a question about the open space down on the south side of the development and what would it be used for. That area is just shown as passive open space. It's actually where they intend on having one of their stormwater measures there. So that area is not being shown as like a park space. It's really just a passive spot where they would all, you know, have one of their stormwater devices there. So I just wanted to provide that information in response to some of the comments we received.
I just want to correct some misstatements that have been made. The density is not 10 homes per acre. The density is 2.94 units per acre. So I just want to make sure we understand that's in your staff's report. That's the facts. Also, we increased the open space that we were required from, I think it was 1,750 to 2,500. We're also building a pump station, which will inure to the benefit of the town and open that area for development by the town. So we have, our density is not near what has been talked about, but it's really only 2.9. We've increased the open space. We've complied with every rule or regulation that the town planning board has asked us to do. And we believe that with the amenity-driven project, this will be a quality project that these are not starter homes. This is a quality project that the town of Wendell will be proud to have. Thank you. I'll be happy to answer any other questions.
Do you have any questions?
I think that I might
You can, in just a moment, you have a chance, just hold on.
So, and I appreciate clarifications and people bringing facts on both sides. Mr. Smith, do you know an average lot size, ballpark average lot size for?
I think the average is, I believe it's close to 8,000. Is that?
This is a big mess.
And it's an estimation, all I needed there.
I'm pretty sure that the average size is what? Yeah, 8,300.
I was just trying to highlight, when we do big numbers, sometimes we skew them. If you start with bad math, you end with bad math, so, I can see where someone would say you're gonna put 10 to 1, I can also see the math, so I wanted to highlight, just figure out what that was, so thank you for that.
Can you tell us a little bit about the quality of the homes that you're planning on building here?
Well, I think these homes will be, there'll be various types of homes. There'll be homes for seniors that are, hopefully to have seniors, and then there'll be different size homes.
What is that range, roughly?
I think the covenants right now talk in terms of minimum on, and some part of it's, I believe, 1,300 square feet, and some parts 1,800 square feet.
So capping out at 1,800.
No, that's the minimum. I think there'll be homes larger than that. I mean, these homes are the type of homes that the average middle American needs to have a good place to live with outstanding amenities. That's what we do, to provide a quality community that firemen, teachers can live in a great community and have amenities that in some places only rich people who make $100,000 or $200,000 can have. And I think that's important, and that's something our company really believes in, is providing amenities to the average American. Any other questions?
Any other?
Thank you.
One more thing.
Give me your name and address.
Warren Bridges, 725 Selma Road again. I'm sorry, I've heard him talk about the traffic studies. If this is middle America, we've got at least 2 cars per household, right? We've got 330 houses. Have we thought about how many cars that actually is and how that possibly can't affect the traffic through town? I mean, it's not possible 600 cars is not going to affect the morning commute driving by the school every morning. I mean, it's just not possible. Thank you.
Come back up here.
It's not up for the developer to decide about traffic. Your town staff required us to pay a substantial amount of money to a traffic engineer who came out here and did an exhaustive traffic study. Once he did that traffic study, he made sure that this development would not be a burden on the traffic in this community. That traffic study then goes to the department, DOT. They look at the traffic study. They have to be satisfied with the traffic study, and then they decide what improvements they think need to be made to make sure that traffic flows in an efficient manner. And what they're going to require us to do is off-site, we're going to have to make a turning lane. We're willing to do that. So the traffic has been looked at, it has been studied. Every development that I've done in the past 20 years, and they have been substantial, every single time people get up and talk about how bad the traffic's going to be. And, you know, that's why we have to provide a traffic study. And I don't think this is going to be a burden. If we did, the traffic study would have pointed that out, and the DOT would have made us make some other improvements.
I have a question for Mr. Bergmark real quick. When a traffic study like that is performed, What are the parameters of the traffic study?
They're gonna show calculations for number of trips being generated, so different uses have different numbers of trips. There's kind of a guidebook of accepted number of trips based on uses, so everyone's using the same numbers in terms of single-family homes versus apartment versus something else. They're gonna break it down by estimated directions of where trips are going, by different peak times of how much you'd be getting in versus, morning commute versus afternoon commute. Looking at existing traffic patterns during those different peak times, and then make recommendations based upon that information.
How far away from a development do they look? I know Wendell Boulevard's been mentioned several times,
In all honesty, I'm not sure. I'd have to ask our engineer. I'm not sure how far they're required to go out in terms of distance.
Okay. Thank you.
Good evening. My name is Travis Tybrowski. I'm the civil engineer for the applicant. Just wanted to make a couple technical clarifications. Not the traffic engineer, so go easy on me. There is a manhole proposed at the end of Street A. I know that was a concern for future development. That is proposed, and there's also a stub going up adjacent to those, between two lots that go up to the triangle pieces being excluded for, again, future development. I know there's some concerns regarding emergency access points. I'd like to point out too that the town has a connectivity index that requires us to stub out a certain number of streets for future development. So while we do only have the one permanent access on the southern piece with the addition of the emergency access, in the future there will be additional access points to provide that coverage. There were some concerns with the water runoff with the additional impervious area. The stormwater management plan right now is still preliminary, but because we're discharging to jurisdictional buffers, we're not allowed to increase the runoff in the post-developed condition. So we will be required to design our structures to prevent that from happening. There was a comment about trash. The small park and the greenway on the north side are required to meet the park space requirements in the UDO, which include provisions such as benches and trash receptacles. I don't know the ratio, but I know that a certain number of trash receptacles is required per number of square feet. So there will be some remediation there. And the other big concern was density. While we are asking for an R4 zoning, as has been pointed out a couple times, we're closer to an R3 density. And both the R4 and R3 zonings are consistent with the comprehensive plan for the future development of town. I think that's all I got. Any questions?
Any questions?
I have one.
Okay.
In regards to there only being one access on the southern piece, even if you wanted to add a second access within the footprint that it currently has, DOT has rules about how close you can put two adjacent streets to each other, correct?
They do, yeah. There are driveway spacing requirements that are complicated by left turn requirements, and again, that finger wetland that goes up under Hollybrook kind of restricts that frontage even further. So it is a restricted frontage as far as number of access points.
Any other questions?
Jason Love, 76 Angleview. You brought up the drainage from the neighborhood, and I haven't seen the maps to get clarified, but how is that being managed? Like, where does that runoff go? Because is it gonna dump? Go ahead, sorry.
So as part of their development plans, they will have to have both soil and erosion control plans as well as stormwater plans that Wake County acts as our stormwater administrator. So they would have to review the post-development flow coming off this site cannot exceed the pre-development flow. So they have to design it, and engineer it so that they have sufficient stormwater devices, spaced strategically around to be able to capture, and detain that flow during, heavy rainfall events. So there, that will be part of the development review process to look at how all that's being captured, and not being, negatively impacting the neighboring properties.
Jason Love, 76 Angle View. So, where does it go, is what I'm kind of asking. I understand the study of you can't push more off than you go on. Is it going to be going into Buffalo Creek, or is it ideally managed and hopefully never flowing off unless it's a hurricane again? I guess. Yes, sorry.
No, you're good. So what we do is we break down the site, I don't want to get too far into it, but we break down the site into drainage areas and we study each outfall point. And that sets our base flow. And then these stormwater facilities are sized such that they retain a volume of water so that there's an internal structure that overflows, so that if some amount builds up, and then that overflow rate is set, and all the elevations and volumes are set such that the post-develop rate meets the pre or better. So it discharges to the same point.
So it's still going to creek?
Correct.
Okay.
But at the same or less rate. So there wouldn't be.
Ponds that it goes through too?
Yep. Yeah.
Thank you.
Yes, okay.
David Arnold, 1429 South Hollybrook Road. I think a point has been brought up several times about traffic that might be of concern to the board, to look further out than just even Wendell Boulevard, but to look at the neighborhoods off of Hollybrook Road to the west that go from Haywood Street and Cypress Street and Second Street and all of those streets that feed through there where people move through in the mornings to get to Wendell Falls Boulevard, to go up and wait in line at Roberts Cross Road at the stoplight with 1003. So it's not just traffic in one little place. It's going to be Selma Road, it's going to be Hollybrook Road up to Wendell Boulevard, it's going to be Wendell Falls Boulevard, it's going to affect all of those neighborhoods in between there and the amount of traffic that goes through. And there is absolutely nothing at this point that can alleviate that traffic jam. When a school bus stops in the morning and you've got 100 cars coming out of this new development, what's going to happen? How long is it going to take to get through there? And how much congestion is that going to produce? We need to look, I think, further in the future and further out in scope than just one small thing. I don't know what the traffic engineers have looked at, but I do know that those areas will make a big difference.
Susan Love, 76 Angleview. I just have a few questions about how the schools are going to handle all this. Because if each house has at least 2 kids, that's 7 to 1,000 kids. I don't know about Carver. My kids go to Wendell. But they're already capped. Where are we going to put those kids? Where are my kids going to go? I've been living here longer than some of those houses that haven't even been built yet. I had to be first in line just for my kid to go to Wendell, because that's where we're zoned for. Where are they going to go? Carver, I'm pretty sure, is not have space for 7 to 1,000 kids. I mean, that's a lot of houses, at least 2 kids. I'm on number 4, so what if they have 4 kids? Where are you going to put them? I'm going to have to fight for my kids to go to the school I want them to.
I'm going to try to answer your question because you've asked it. And I'm going to make a more broad statement to try to help put everything in perspective. The transportation stuff works because we have a transportation plan that was voted on in 2015, and it's based on development numbers, not only from that area, but the whole town And to be quite honest with you, Johnston County, because what if this development would have dropped 500 yards to the south? We have a plan in place to deal with the transportation stuff. So it applies to that. Wake County Public Schools has a similar plan to deal with the schools and their growth. I know there's immediate questions on some of those, but just know that sometimes when we ask questions and I feel like they don't get answered, I feel like maybe we missed that. Like, there are a ton of underlying plans. I just read a 900-page hazard mitigation plan for Wake County yesterday. Or, excuse me, I didn't read all 900 pages.
Oh, I was about to say.
But like there are plans out there that all of this stuff's based on. So while it may not be directly addressed on the agenda, it's being addressed, and I think that's a fair statement.
It's being addressed, but like, how is it being addressed? Like, I realize they're having new schools built and, renovations.
I can add this. Lake Myra Elementary was originally designed to be a year-round 4-track school, and they're currently running 1-track. We had this discussion a few meetings back about just how overcrowded Wendell schools are, and some would have you believe that the schools around here are, bursting at the seams. At some point in the future, Wendell Elementary is going to be either substantially remodeled, rebuilt, moved, or something. That's Wake County's plan, and I would suggest you address those questions towards Wake County Public Schools. We have often said that we don't get as much a seat at the table with Wake County schools as we wish we did, but there are a number of schools around here. Wendell Elementary, I went to that school. I went to Old Carver, which is now shuttered, but for kindergarten and first grade, but 2nd through 5th, I went to Wendell Elementary School, and it was fairly crowded then. Of course, that was before New Carver was built, but so some of these schools have been around for a while, but one of the reasons that Wendell Elementary is capped now is because it's such a good school. I mean, it was nationally recognized, one of the best schools, if not the best magnet school in the country, and it's attracted a lot of attention, and that's one of the reasons. I have a 3-year-old and a 3-month-old, and I wonder where they're going to be able to go to school. I'm not sure that the school that they're going to go to exists yet. If the growth that's coming to this side of the county comes as we all expect it to, then a lot's going to change in the next 5 years, much more so than's probably changed in the past 10 or 15. And so Wake County's building them as fast as I think they can. Their bond issue passed, didn't they? Yeah. And so they're struggling to keep up with growth. Wake County is one of the fastest growing counties in the nation. And so to say we expect growth, I would say you can't expect anything other than growth. And so, but as far as the schools go, that's sort of my take on it, is there are some schools around here who have some room to expand. And Wake County's built new schools around here. I mean, they built Lake Myra, not specifically for Wendell Falls, but it was built to serve the greater area back towards Knightdale. Wendell Middle was built, and at the time I remember some discussions saying that we didn't need a middle school. I thought that was absolutely ridiculous, but now there's plenty of kids that go there. So Wake County has a plan to address that, and I would like it if we had a little more input in some of that stuff. We don't. Sometimes things get sprung on us at the last minute, and we're not exactly happy about it either as a board. So I would suggest you take those concerns to the Wake County School Board, because that's ultimately where those decisions get made, and honestly, we just don't have but so much control at the town level over that stuff. I wish we did. I'd love to sit here and tell you that we do, but this is different elected officials.
Right, I understand that, but as far as like the houses per section, per acre, whatever, it's still like those kids are gonna have to go somewhere, and I'm pretty sure it's gonna be before they even think about building a new school in our area. And Wendell, I don't even drive my kids to school because that traffic is horrible in the morning already. And I live, a mile and a half, 2 miles away from the school? I don't wanna endure it. Because it's just a headache and hassle and,
Again, part of that comes back to Wake County Public Schools, because
well,
part
it's
of
the,
their
it's the schools
transportation
and the
plan
traffic.
is that they don't provide school buses if you live within a certain distance of the school. And so people are forced to travel there. Some people who would rather put their kids on the school bus, and a school bus holds a lot more kids than, you know, a line of SUVs a mile long. And so it would be nice if we could get some bus service a little bit closer into the schools. But Wake County said that those kids live close enough that they could walk. Nobody's making their first grader walk a mile and a half or a mile to Wendell Elementary. That's not gonna happen, and so people end up driving them in cars. That's where that problem comes from, and that's Wake County Public Schools policy, at least last I heard. And so I would love to say that we would run buses. You know, you would think that inside of town would be a great place to run buses and get congestion off the roads.
They can barely even get out of the school.
That's right, you can't. And I have to drive that way too, and I get stuck in it, and I don't have kids in the school, and so I try to go around it as best I can, and not add to it. But I agree, yes, they're gonna have to go somewhere, but I have full confidence that Wake County Schools is not gonna tell those kids, hey, if you could hold on till you're 10 years old, we'll get you an elementary school. They're gonna put them somewhere, and they'll build schools.
But it's like the problem they're having in Cary, like they have thousands of houses around this one school, and all those people want their kids to go to that one school because that's closest. That's the same reference. I want my kid to go to the school that's closest, not bust 30, 45 minutes away. It already takes my kid that goes to the elementary school 40 minutes to get home from the time school lets out. 40 minutes. Can you imagine if they had to go to a school that was 10, 15 miles away? How long that would take?
I went to East Wake Middle School, which is on the other side of Knightdale. I had an hour and a half bus ride back in the 90s. So I can't tell you that it has gotten any better, and I can't tell you that it will.
This is gonna be an ongoing problem with the schools and the numbers in the schools, no matter honestly even if this wound up being R3 or whatever the density of it, that's gonna happen. And you're completely correct, and I agree. And I get more complaints about the traffic on Wendell Boulevard than probably anything else, that and we need a restaurant. Daily, almost. So, I mean, you know, it is a problem, and we are often forgotten, and we kind of are the last place that gets attention in Wake County, unfortunately. I try real hard to be a squeaky wheel, we all do. So,
Thank you.
thank you. Anyone else? All right, speak now.
I have a few comments unless you want to do discussion.
Hold on, we've got some other people standing up.
Is someone standing? Yes, ma'am, come on.
Judy Arnold, 1429 South Hollybrook Road. Is the developer Smith Edwards, or is it Fred Smith?
I believe that's,
Do you know what they're the same?
I assume it
I mean,
is.
Fred is saying that if you're in this development, you're
The developer would need to address
Yeah.
the question about who the company is versus who a person is.
The developer is the Fred Smith Company. Smith Edwards is a partnership, between, our family and the, Randy Edwards family. So we own the land together, but the Fred Smith Company will be the people who will be doing the development, who will be responsible for the development.
Thank you. All right. Did you have a question?
I just had some comments. If you were going to close the hearing and we were going to have a discussion, I'll save it for then. But
We can, okay. All right. Public hearing's closed. Commissioner Boyette.
did you need a motion first before we can have a discussion on the motion?
No, we can discuss.
Okay.
We can discuss all this and then we'll make a motion.
Let us discuss. I have a few points, and I'm gonna see if I can address some of the questions that came up and some of the concerns that came up. The first one was the open space and how it was gonna be taken care of, especially the big chunk towards the south or whatever. I can say, as far as open space, being added to neighborhoods, especially passive open space, I live in a neighborhood that supposedly has open space and passive open space, and I couldn't tell you where it's at. It's not marked. As far as I know, it's an unimproved lot, and I don't have any right to be there. I wish that changed. I wish people knew. I hope that my kids have somewhere to go play in the woods like I did. I grew up on a farm, but I can't tell you where the open space is in my neighborhood. It was set aside as open space, but it's not marked. It's not, there's nothing, that basically delineates that. And as a consequence of that, it's mostly left alone. Especially if it's gonna be in the backside of a neighborhood. The people that are gonna live in the back end of that neighborhood are gonna look after it almost like it's their own. So I'll just say that. As far as the density, allow me to add my own confusing density number to this. An acre is 43,560 square feet, and if the average lot size is 8,300 square feet, then that puts you at 5.2 houses per acre. Now that's, if you pull out the open space, if you pull out the room for the streets and the roads, if you pull out all the right-of-ways, and you pull out all the other stuff, the amenities, the clubhouse, if you take just the lots and you figure it out, it comes up to 5.2 houses per acre. Like I said, that's with nothing else. If you add in the open space and the streets and all the right-of-ways and the clubhouse, everything else, then you get the lower number. I'm not real sure where the higher, the 10 number came from. But, even the most liberal reading of it, you would come up with 5.2 houses per square acre. So let's talk about density. It would be nice if everyone could live on a 1 acre lot, but that's not the reality of it. I live on a lot that's roughly a third of an acre, and I live in a cul-de-sac, and it's a tiny amount of pavement in front of my house. The house I grew up in was on a 1 acre lot, but it probably had a good 2,000 feet of state maintained highway. If you look at the numbers, if every lot in Wendell was 1 acre and had the requisite frontage for that, we couldn't pave the streets. People don't pay enough taxes to pave the streets. It would take far longer to collect the trash, deliver the mail. We wouldn't have the density required to collect enough tax revenue to pay police officers or firemen. We would have never got a new EMS station. Higher density neighborhoods basically pay, they come as close to paying for themselves as anything short of commercial. Commercial pays more than what they cost the town. Residential, as a general rule, costs the town more than they bring in taxes. Basically, commercial subsidizes residential. And the larger the lots get, the more subsidized they are. If every lot in town was an acre, we'd be bankrupt. We'd absolutely be bankrupt. And so that's not getting down on larger lots or anything like that. But, some of the nicest new developments we've had in the past 5 years and in the past 20 years has been on smaller lots, where people with young families want to come so they can play in the street, kids play in the street, be within walking distance of neighbors. Another thing is, the mayor said something about people ask her about the traffic and about when we're getting a restaurant. Restaurants want to know how many people live in town. And if you want restaurants, if you want more businesses, if you want more town amenities, then you're going to have more people. You're going to have more people. And medium and higher density development is how you get it. And if we subdivided this town, my granddad, one of the things I remember him saying is, they don't make no more land. And I agree with that. If you subdivide it all out into 1 acre lots, then, it's nice. I can't hear you. You're way over there, but there's never going to be enough density of people to ever get any more restaurants or ever get another grocery store or anything like that. As far as making improvements to Wendell Boulevard and the traffic along Wendell Falls Parkway and 1003, which intersection I'm intimately familiar with, one need only look towards Holly Springs. Holly Springs just had to put a bond referendum to pay for traffic upgrades for their town. If we had to do the same thing in Wendell with the number of houses that we currently had, the number of citizens we currently had, it would probably double the tax rate in Wendell. Until we get some higher density around here to spread that cost around, there probably aren't going to be any improvements. When you add in more people in town, it gives us more leverage when we go to the meeting, Campo. That's based on population. And so when we go into a meeting, does it matter if you vote?
Doesn't matter if I'm there.
It doesn't matter, that's right. And so, but there's basically, Wake County's filling up, and the eastern side of the county is basically the only place with open space left. And I can assure you that this board is doing all we can to try to learn from the mistakes that were made in Holly Springs and Apex and Cary. We need to learn from their growing pains. And one of the things, and I've spoke with several of the commissioners from that side of the county, and one of the things they've said is that allowing too much low density basically hamstrings you because it's not going to be redeveloped. That and there's a few other things, but I already hit on the schools. But the other one, the only other thing is this emergency access here that runs along Street K and Street I. As someone who I guess would be the intended user of that, I'm not driving through there. I'm not going to drive a fire truck. I'm not going to get out and pull up bollards to do that. I'm going down the street. I hope you ain't parked on the side of the street when I'm coming through. But we're not going to drive a $500,000 fire truck through a grassy area just because it's marked on a map that we can. The intention here is simply to satisfy some regulatory requirement. But if you look at the map, there's 1, 2, 3 other stub streets that will provide additional access in the future further down in the neighborhood. And if you look on the north side, you can see where one of those stub streets connects into Deer Grove Trail. I'm going to mark that down as a win for the transportation plan. That's exactly the way that was designed to happen, and that is what happened. And so now you have another way in and out of at least the north side. And if development ever comes further down on the south side, you'll have 1, 2, possibly 3 more entrances down that way. So I know I couldn't address everybody's questions. I don't think we could address everybody's concerns, but that's at least the list that I had going, and I hope it was at least helpful.
Anyone else?
Do you want to go that one first?
Okay, yeah. So, we need a motion.
Mayor, I make a motion to table action until after item number 5B.
Okay, we have a motion to table any action until after 5B. All in favor?
Aye.
Okay. 5B is a public hearing, annexation petition, A 1803 for, I assume the acres have been changed as well, 16.19 acres of property, excluding right-of-way, located adjacent to the Groves of Deerfield subdivision on either side of South Hollybrook Road, identified by PIN numbers 1783921299 and 1793020954. 178383760 and 17839470008. Mr. Bergmark.
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. Thank you for We're citing that for the record.
I know you like me to read the numbers out, so you don't have to.
Sounds better coming from you. As stated, for this item, this is the annexation petition, associated with the conditional district request that we just held a hearing on. Tonight, you're being asked to hold a hearing on this, I guess actually resume, a hearing, on this annexation petition and consider taking action. Action could consist of adopting the attached, ordinance. So again, Fred Smith has submitted this petition for the 116.19 acres of land. There's also a little over 2 acres of associated right-of-way. Includes 4 contiguous parcels, as detailed in the report. Currently contain 1 dwelling, but are otherwise vacant. And again, they're looking at the R4 conditional district we just discussed. The town clerk has certified the sufficiency of the annexation petition, and the applicant has requested that action on this be delayed until an agreement is reached. It sounded like, based on the applicant's remarks, that they did find the staff's comments and conditions acceptable as part of the rezoning petition. We saw before the map, again, just wanted to highlight that area in red, the hashed area is excluded from this request. Otherwise, all the parcels highlighted on that map are included within the request. In terms of taxes and tax implications, again, there's only 1 dwelling right now. Total assessed value is a little over $2 million for the whole area. So at the current tax rate, that would result in a little over $8,500 in annual tax revenue. Of course, as it develops, that number will dramatically go up. We can't really speak to exactly how much that would be, but if you were just going to assume an average value of lots being $200,000 and just using that figure because it's a round number, we can't really speak to what it would be or wouldn't be. But just to give you a round number and tell you what it would result in, then the annual tax revenue based on that assumption would be $332,000. And of course, that would adjust based on the actual value of the homes. In terms of providing service to this area, the proposed annexation area would of course require service from police and public works, but both departments currently serve adjacent residential developments, so this is not seen as an undue extension of their services. You do have that annexation ordinance as an attachment. That's all I have for you in terms of report. I'd be happy to address any questions you may have.
Do you have any questions for Mr. Bergmark? Let me go ahead and open the public hearing now. Right. Public hearing's now open. We'll hear from the applicant.
I don't have anything to say more than what.
Okay. Anyone else wishing to speak for or against the annexation request? Nobody? All right. I'm going to close the public hearing. And gentlemen, do y'all have any questions on the board? He didn't withdraw.
Take action on this one, do you verify the
Take action on it unless he withdraws, and he did not.
Okay.
So he didn't wish to withdraw, so we're going to take it.
Okay.
Go back to 5A, no new motion necessary. After 5A. So we've got to take care of 5B, then we'll go back to 5A.
Okay.
So we need a motion, if you choose to approve the annexation request. It doesn't have to be you if you don't want to. Make the motion.
One more question for Mr. Bergmark while they're working on that. David, do you know if, I saw the planning board voted 6-0 to approve this, and there was conditions added, but have you heard of any other condition discussed this evening that we could readily meet?
No.
clarify, this is for the annexation and not the development rezoning, the conditional district rezoning. This is just the annexation.
The annexation, yeah.
So we'll pause and go back. Yeah,
We'll
go back to that one.
Next.
I'll think on it.
And so there would need to be a motion, Mr. Attorney, whether or not to approve the annexation.
That's the item before the board at the moment.
I would like to add that if we're considering whether or not there's any additional conditions we want to attach, we want to go back and have that discussion prior to taking act. Because basically, we need to make sure that the
applicant
is
willing
amenable to any additional condition we may do
before we annex the
prior to
property.
annexing it, because if we don't come to an agreement on the conditional district, then they don't want to move forward with the annexation if they can't then develop it in the way that they agree to.
Right.
Mayor, one way to address the chicken and egg problem is, if you're in the conditional district item, and if the board's inclined to approve it with the conditions that are agreeable to the applicant, then it would be voted on and approved subject to annexation. Then you take up the annexation issue.
So we could go back to 5A first,
Yes,
and the motion be subject to annexation.
yes. Of course, if the board's inclined to deny it, then it doesn't matter which order you take them in.
Okay, okay. Would y'all like to, do that? It's really, up to you.
I'll make a motion that we go back to, we table this action on item 5B, and return back to 5A and to have more discussion on that.
Okay. So we have a motion to go back to 5A and table 5B. All in favor?
All right.
Okay. So we're back at 5A again. Did y'all want to discuss that further? There's some conditions that you wanted to discuss,
No, I was
Mr. Joyner?
hoping to hear from the rest of us. I know I've heard from myself and John. I'm just trying to get a better feel, and actually I was just trying to fill space while y'all were getting the motion ready.
Okay.
I mean, and I'll deviate from what Commissioner Boyette said a little bit and say this. I personally worked with a site location guy right after I got on the town board here, because the first thing I heard was, we want a Chick-fil-A, we want this, we want that, we want this amenity, we want that amenity. And I had a friend out in Statesville who does that for a living. He connects big boxes and commercial with places that can go, and paid for him to do a study for us. And we were somewhere between 500 and 3,500 rooftops off of a lot of those nice things we want. So density is a requirement, at least if you want to have the other things. Now, if you don't, that's fine too. And there's a very tried and true way of doing that. My dad has done it at his house. He owns all the land around him that he's concerned about. When he bought it, he just knew that this was how big it was going to be. I made the same decision when I bought on Commander Drive. It's a lot that's probably not much different than Commissioner Boyette's and not too far off of these. You kind of get what you know, or when you sign up, you know what you're getting. The other piece for me that's comforting is that we're building this at, people don't build 300 houses if they don't think they can sell 300 houses. The market drives that portion of it. And I certainly can recall a time when a development of this size would be met with, anybody would like to see the growth. I understand the road concerns. I think that a lot of those have, to the best that they can be, been addressed with DOT, and that's an evolving, as the project develops, DOT is likely to come back at some later juncture and change their mind about something. I'm having a hard time hearing anything besides other problems. So like I understand when we're talking about deeds and existing rules that are on land, that makes a lot of sense and those are concerns and I know how to track those. What I don't know how to track is some of the other concerns that get brought up. I mean, if we use that logic, we can't, our schools are overcrowded. Well, guess what? Raleigh's gonna keep building houses and Knightdale's gonna keep building houses and Rollsville's gonna keep building houses. And they actually don't care what city your kid goes to school in. They're gonna put them to the closest school. So everyone else can create the same problem for us. So that's something we have to trust in the long-range planning of doing. We can't be responsible for everything. So I feel like there's been a lot of comments tonight about there's no plan here. How do we know that this is going to work? And what I'd say is there's a ton of plans. The UDO that was worked on that predates this board, this was based off the rules in the UDO. I can't think of a plan that doesn't apply actually here. That's the dilemma I have. Look, I live directly above this. Would I like someone to come in and build $1 million homes? Absolutely. Do I think that's a probability? No. Not on this track. But I'm having a hard time hearing the specifics of what we can fix or what the give and take needs to be. It seems to be an all or nothing on both sides, and that's hard to find the middle. It's hard to come up with something better if the only answer is no, because the answer of being no just doesn't work. Not all the time. And if it worked today, it might not work in the future, so we have to understand what the problem is we're trying to fix and try to fix it.
I'll speak just for a second too. And my thoughts are this is prime real estate for being developed. I mean, well, I guess it's what makes any good development. It's open space and it's available. And it abuts existing development. So I feel like those are some nice pieces to start off with. To go off of a few things, my concern is looking into this was, like some of the citizens, was just the density. It seemed, when I see it kind of next to the neighborhood it's against to it, it seemed very, even though it was close to density, it just seemed a whole lot more dense than that neighborhood did. And so I felt like when the neighborhoods were an R4 and you have an R3 that almost ties in together, I felt like that change in density or a change in zoning would be very weird. I would like to see them still both be at R4 at the same level. Whether or not they're close or not, I think it's one of those things that if they're close to R4, then let's just do R4 and let's make it exactly the same. Commissioner Boyd, you had a good comment earlier when you said you can't make more land, and I feel like it's the same way. You can't make more land, and we're one of the few places that's blessed to have a lot of land, and I would much rather take the time to make sure that this is the good use for that land, and I agree with density and restaurants, and it's what our citizens need. But on the same note, we also hear that that people like the charm of Wendell, and I want to make sure that before we just approve this and 300 homes come in and we don't know anything about the homes, that we make sure that this is going to be a valuable asset to the community, not just more rooftops in the community. So as I sit right now, I wouldn't be in favor of how it is now, but that's just my opinion. And I think that was all I had to say. Yeah, thank you.
Anything you want to add, Mr. Carroll? Commissioner Myrick, anything?
Well, yes, my only concern would be the traffic, and it really does shock me that the traffic study didn't come up with anything. I think of, when I think of these houses, I did the math, if each house has 2 cars, it's just shy of 700 cars adding to our town every day. And I think Smithfield Road, and if anybody's ever got off on Smithfield Road heading back toward Johnson County, it is a nightmare at 5 o'clock, 5:30, 6 o'clock, and 6:30. So I would not be in favor, of this right now, just because I don't think the town, we've done our due diligence in regards to seeing how this would impact the rest of our town in regards to traffic.
Anyone else?
And I just, that was my last point I was gonna say too, with you, David, or Commissioner Myrick, that, I was kind of surprised by the traffic, impact as well too. Hollybrook Road is one thing, but I think as it funnels into more of the town, it just seems like it would be, surprising they wouldn't have more of an impact. But I trust studies. I mean, I'm evidence-based, but it surprised me.
Right. What would y'all like, how do y'all want to proceed?
You looking at motion?
Well, that's where we are. Yeah.
You got it? I make a motion to approve the conditional use district, how did you word it? Mr. Attorney?
Subject to the annexation.
Subject to the annexation.
Can I clarify that that includes the planning board and staff recommendations as agreed to by the developer in the hearing?
Yes.
So we have a motion to approve the, did you say annexation?
No, subject to it.
Right,
Contingent
okay.
on the
So
annexation.
we have a motion to approve the rezoning, subject to the annexation, and also subject to the planning board and, recommendations and staff recommendations. Is there any discussion on the motion? All right, all in favor, let me see your hands. What, go ahead.
Can I,
Sure.
discuss on the motion? So, one, there's a lot of people in the room that have my cell phone number, that are here speaking about it, and I haven't heard anything until tonight. And that cuts both ways for me, because maybe you just heard about it today, and there's folks that I'd be inclined to table it long enough for us to, I would be inclined to table it. That said, part of the thing that we're concerned about is the traffic study, and I don't know what else we could do besides having, I don't know what further we could look at. Is there something further to look at? Have we looked at all the transportation things?
I'd like to know how far the traffic study went out. He never was able
I
to
mean,
clarify that.
I don't want to delay this just for the sake of delaying it, and if we were delaying it for a week so half of y'all don't show up next time, I don't want to do that. But if there's a legitimate purpose of, if we can find out information to put people at ease, or not put them at ease, but if we can find out more information in a reasonable manner, but I don't know what to ask for, I guess is what I'm saying.
Yeah, I don't think that you'd have likely any new review or new traffic study done. I mean, it's basically the study is done. Now, could we come back with a better explanation of how the study was done and what it looked at and how it got to its results? Sure, when you asked how far out does it go, and I said I'm not sure, I think the answer is that actually it depends on how many trips are being generated. The more trips are being generated, the further out your review has to go. I'm sure there's a formula to it. I just don't happen to know the formula. But I mean, we could maybe give some more information that might make some people feel more at ease. I don't know if that would help or not, but.
Thank you, David. I just was. You'll hear things like the road is designed to handle certain capacities, that has to handle certain capacities a certain percentage of the time. It has to handle capacities certain times of day and days of the week consistently over time. I mean, so that's the kind of details the planning director's talking about that the traffic study should have taken into account. The further you get away from an impact point, the harder it is for anybody to determine how much of it's the impact there versus the impact of every other thing that's happening in the greater community. And so the ability for any jurisdiction to require an improvement on a developer deals with your ability to tie it to a rational nexus of the impact of that development on your community. And the further you get away from that rational nexus, you'll have to talk to the attorney about the harder it is the ability to enforce whatever condition or requirement that you put on the development community. As the schools and other public facility ordinances, they're adequate public facility ordinances. They're great up to the point that your economy turns south. You've invested the taxpayer money on facilities that sit empty without any development coming into them. So there's a chicken and the egg on when you provide the facility. Being responsive after the fact creates concerns with overcrowding in schools and other facilities. At the same time, as a elected body that you're putting public tax dollar resources into something that's definitely needed at that point. So there's a little bit of chicken and egg when you get into public facility ordinances. Every development's going to have an impact on traffic. All right. Every time that you add a new household to our community, a new commercial development, a new park site, a new land use of any kind is going to generate traffic based on that. And traffic engineers study that and talk about how that's dispersed over different areas. Happy to have staff go back and have a traffic engineer look at it from a town perspective, provide input. Did we have an outside consultant look at their traffic study?
It was forwarded, but since DOT was reviewing it and made the recommendation already, I didn't push the issue with AMT, but we could definitely get him to make comment to be included on it.
We can have our engineer review that and provide feedback at the next meeting to the commission as to that traffic impact and its analysis and make sure it's consistent with what state requirements are. State requirements may not be in the best interest of the town. They may be. But that sounds like what you and the community want to weigh moving forward on this. And I'm sure the developer would like that, any confusion cleared up as well moving forward so that they understand the due diligence that they went through in providing that traffic analysis to the community.
I also wanted to just add that, there was a question about the parking and no parking on one side or not. If there was concerns over that, you could have that added as, explicitly added as a condition and have the means of that, just be identified as part of the final development plan. There's different ways you can do it. I don't think we necessarily want a whole bunch of signs saying no parking this side. In my mind, it might be something more like a stamp on the curb so that even if you were repaving the asphalt, you weren't messing it up, but I don't know. There's different ways you could do it, and this, to me, I don't think we should try to address that if we did address a condition, but mainly to say that it would be known, we would have it marked in some way to make sure that we weren't, blocking the street with cars parked on both sides.
In light of the board's comments on the issue, I will withdraw my motion and make a motion to table this until the next meeting,
November 26th.
November the 26th, contingent on additional information from the town engineer and any other interested parties.
Okay. All right, so we have a motion to table.
Just as a reminder, I won't be here that night.
Oh, Lord.
I know you can't.
Then why don't we push it to the next meeting and have that?
December 10th.
That's December. I don't know if he would be here December.
I just have that November conflict. I'm here the rest of the day.
Do you want to do that, move it to December? Do we?
Is the applicant?
Is that pushing too far out from the applicant there?
I don't know. Getting a ways away.
Yeah.
So are we amending that to December 10th?
I'm asking them.
Yes.
I'm fine with it. I would wonder if the applicant is okay with it.
All right.
I mean, once we see the study, we can make a decision.
shouldn't be that complicated.
No.
Yeah.
I will leave it the next board meeting.
Leave
If we
it
can
the
do it.
26th.
Let's do it, let's not make him wait for a
Yeah.
decision.
All right, we're gonna go back to the 26th, Ms. Goggins.
All right.
And if it's too legal, we'll,
Okay, so we have a motion to table this until November 26th. All in favor? All right.
Madam Mayor, is that for both items 5A and 5B?
I think so, because 5B was contingent on 5A a minute ago, so that's where I am now with my little flow chart in my head with it.
Okay.
Okay.
It might be better for the record if you have a separate motion to continue
Okay.
5B.
All right, do we have a motion to continue 5B as well?
so moved.
All right, we have a motion to continue 5B as well. All in favor?
Aye.
All right. Item number 7 is a discussion and action on proposed amendment to the town's noise ordinance as it relates to church bells.
Oh, you skipped one.
I did? Oh my God, I've got so many scribble scrabble on here, I missed one.
So this is gonna be my monthly reminder of everybody that's exiting now, because the thing you came to hear about is gone. I still don't hear, so you still need to reach out to us, because this is the first night that I've heard from anybody, and now I'm not gonna get a chance after the meeting to talk to anybody, so. But that's I need a communication piece. If you wanna get in touch with us, it's on the cell phones on the website, emails on the website. Feel free to leave, but just remember, you can contact us in between the meetings, because we miss you.
All right, item number 6, I apologize, I jumped right over it. It's request for temporary street closure for Wendell Wonderland in downtown Wendell on Friday, December 7th, 2018. I'm sorry I wasn't able to skip you.
Thanks for forgetting me, Mayor.
Mr. Pulaski.
Good evening, Madam Mayor and Commissioners. I'm here to ask for a request for a temporary street closure for the Wendell Wonderland event downtown on December the 7th. Last year's event was well attended, and it seems that event is getting larger every year. The evening on December the 7th will include performances throughout downtown. Mr. and Mrs. Claus will be there at the town square, the light show, the trolley rides going through downtown. It's also food trucks, as well as the cantata, the cookie walk, and the craft market and live nativity. So as you can see, there is a lot of events going on that evening. And for the safety of those in attendance, I'm here asking for Cypress Street to be closed between 3rd and 2nd Street like it has been closed in the past. And also this year, an additional closing of 3rd Street between Cypress and Main Street. That would be the area right in front of like Agave and the Total Connection.
All right, does anyone have any questions for Mr. Pulaski? Can we get a motion to close the street?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the street closures for December 7th, Wendell Wonderland.
All right, we have a motion to close the 2 street closures requested for December 7th for Wendell Wonderland. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Thank you.
Thank you. All right, now we'll come to number 7, discussion and action on proposed amendment to the town's noise ordinance as it relates to church bells. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. As stated, this item relates to our noise ordinance, and asking for the board to consider an amendment related specifically to bells and chimes. So the town's general noise regulations are contained in Article 3. Section 10-80A basically states that it should be unlawful for any person to create or assist in creating, permit the continuance of any unreasonably loud, disturbing, and unnecessary noise in town. Noise of such character, intensity, and duration as to be detrimental to the life or health of any individual is prohibited. The subsequent section then goes on to identify specific noises that are prohibited. Some of those noises might be associated with things like garages, construction activities, and might have specific hours in which they're prohibited. Other ones, such as use of sirens, have specific exceptions created for police and fire, rescue, or other emergency vehicle use, things of that nature. The police department enforces our town's noise ordinance and has a fair amount of latitude in interpreting what level, frequency, or duration of noise is considered excessive or disturbing. It's come to staff's attention that one specific type of noise, being bells and gongs, is in need of an amendment. So this falls under subsection 13, and it considers the sounding of any bell or gong attached to any building or premise which disturbs the quiet or repose of persons in the vicinity, as one of the prohibited noise types. There's no exceptions to allow, or allowances, as stated relating to the periodic ringing of church bells. Several churches within our jurisdiction, of course, have bells with a physical or simulated electronic chimes which periodically sound. While the police department has never really received a complaint regarding church bells, the current language would support that complaint and put them in a very awkward and unintended enforcement situation. So to address this, staff is proposing an amendment to clarify when a bell or gong or chime would be a prohibited noise and kind of create an exception for churches within that language. And we're proposing to amend the language for subsection 13, bells, gongs, and adding the word chimes, to state the sounding of any bell, gong, chime, or similar electronic stimulation attached to any building or premises which disturbs the quiet or repose of persons in the vicinity, with the exception of church bells or chimes when part of a religious observance or service, provided they operate for no more than 10 minutes in any hour between the hours of 7 a.m. and 8 p.m. So trying to create an exception with some parameters for bells, just so we don't have an occasion where our churches are in violation of our noise ordinance because they have a bell or chime go off at the hour. And staff's in support of this. We did look at Chief Carter and Sherry sent me some examples of some other languages, and different jurisdictions have different specific language for creating this exception. So this was kind of a little bit of a combination of some of that material. Happy to take any questions you may have.
Mr. Bergmark, how did this issue come up?
We had somebody that was looking to add a church bell and wanted to make sure it was okay, and to our surprise, the answer was no. So we were asked to take a look at this and see how we can't make this so it's not a non-compliant issue when something like that comes up.
Are there any churches that we know of right now that are operating outside of these parameters that are listed?
Not that I'm aware of. I can't speak to knowing how often people ring bells or for how long, but we tried to make it fairly lenient in terms of 10 minutes in an hour.
Fair enough.
So, David, before the meeting, I was just joking with you, but I was really serious. I didn't even know we had a noise ordinance. And now that I know, I don't think churches are the problem. So I guess my next question would be directed to Chief. I mean, does this noise ordinance cover these motorcycles and these loud mufflers on the cars?
Actually, when we began to discuss this, we talked about more of a comprehensive review of the ordinance because there have been some cases that have affected it, but we were trying to address this specific issue in the most timely basis. There's a component of it that talks about vehicles being in, forgive me if I quoted improperly, but it's basically an ill repair or disrepair. So it's not operating as designed, but that is a very subjective set of language. For example, if somebody went and had equipment put on the vehicle, the argument could be made it's operating like it's supposed to, even though it may be outside of our norms, what we would expect, and generate some of the vehicle complaints. So that's one of the other items we do want to look at comprehensively. There's a better way to address that.
So you're gonna look at more, but in the meantime, we just need to deal with the church bell thing because we've been approached
We felt this was
by a
critical
church.
to
I asked staff to have a very focused time-responsive response to the party that's inquiring rather than a long, drawn-out review of our noise ordinance, just more of a precision on this one. We'd be happy to work into our work plan over time if we want to take a longer look at different parts of the code. This is designed just to address a specific need of your community dealing with this issue. I can say from working in other communities, when you get into enforcing vehicles and sound devices that move, getting decibel readings and being able to enforce that can become problematic. How far are you away, the duration, some of these other things take into account. That's a more nuanced thing that we're going to have to look into and see what's enforceable under state law and can be realistically enforced by our department with what equipment. But we can, if the board would like us to look at that moving
Is
forward.
that something you'd like, Commissioner Myrick?
Yes, and I'm glad to hear we're not gonna be writing churches citations.
Yeah, let's please
Glad,
not do that.
hopefully not be put in that position.
Okay.
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the proposed amendment to the town's noise ordinance.
Okay, we have a motion to approve the proposed amendment to the town's noise ordinance. Is there any discussion on the motion?
I have some discussion, or actually I have one more question.
Okay.
How many churches currently have bells, and how many churches currently ring bells?
More than one, and I don't know. Yeah, we've not done an audit to see how many. I mean, we just know that, anecdotally, there's, this is not an isolated issue, but I don't know how many are ring.
They play them at noon, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 p.m., along with a jaunty jingle after the chiming of the hour.
And it's great. We love it.
I lived in 2 houses that were within, my current house is still within sight of the bell tower of the church, and I find it's awesome. I love it. So, I didn't know, I know Central has a actual physical bell. They're a little far out to be bothering, but so many people. And I don't think they ring it, but so much. But I didn't know if there were any other churches, in town proper that actually had.
Yeah,
I believe there are churches looking to expand.
Yeah, I don't know how many, but
Well,
like I said, there could be more
Well,
coming.
It's a new, additional.
One of the things that popped in my head that we're not directly addressing here is like, if, that day that the college, locates in Wendell, I thought schools sometimes will have, especially colleges will sometimes have bells as well, so, but that's a problem for another day.
Another group of people. Okay, are you done with your discussion?
That's all the discussion I have.
Okay, so, you recall we have a motion to approve the amendment to the noise ordinance. And then we've had discussion. All in favor? All right. Item number 8 is a presentation and approval of a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Commerce, North Carolina Main Street and Rural Planning Center to complete the Wendell, North Carolina Economic Development and Downtown Assessment. I'm going to hear from the manager.
And my role is introductory to our visitor from the Department of Commerce who's sat through our
Very
meeting so
patiently.
far.
Thank you, sir.
Yeah.
Wow.
He has a past background in economic development and community planning, so he's probably relived several flashbacks in his past career experiences. So when the community filled out its grant application, or the grant form for Department of Commerce on the grant received, there was a little checkbox that the planning director recognized that said, if you'd like more information on the Rural Planning and Main Street Division of the Department of Commerce, check here. And we said, well, why not? So we checked the box, and what happened is Bruce Niglin from Department of Commerce shows up. And so we started talking with Bruce about things that we heard from you in the community about how can we have a vibrant downtown moving forward? How can we get community input and buy-in to that? How do we get commercial businesses to locate within here? What's here now? What's missing? What's leaking to other markets? What's the next place we need to consider for economic activity in the community? Our economic development strategic plan came out right at the end of the recession, so it's flavored by the recession. It doesn't really take into account the current economy and growth at Wendell Falls. It doesn't capture this board and this vision that I've heard. And so we communicated that to the Department of Commerce, and Bruce said, we do that. I said, well, how much do you do that for? He goes, cost of gas and meals. And so I'm going to let Bruce talk a little bit about what they do and what they would propose to do under Memorandum of Understanding, and how staff and Department of Commerce can reach some of your economic development visions by working on a community plan over the next remainder of this fiscal year and be ready to go into the next budget cycle with an action plan that we can move on for downtown and other economic activities. Bruce Nixon.
Good evening. Thank
I
you
only
so
have a
much for
20-minute
being here.
PowerPoint for you, so, kidding. I have no PowerPoint. Yeah, I think Mark kind of described it pretty well in broad terms. We do work with communities throughout the state in our prosperity zones. I'm the community planner for the North Central Prosperity Zone, which is 15 counties, including Wake. But we deal really with smaller, rural communities, so that's what our focus is. What we're talking about doing for Wendell is really an economic development and downtown assessment. It would basically have a one-day interactive, pretty much a full day community assessment, in which we would have a work group of local stakeholders and knowledgeable people about things that are going on in town, including some of the commissioners, elected officials, and others that were put together through Mark and everybody. And it would be an all-day deal where, like I said, where we talk about some of the things, the issues that are going on in town, stakeholder interviews. We would identify community assets. We would do a SWOT analysis because you want to have a baseline of information. We would also provide a retail market analysis, which would share that during that day, to show some of the retail leakage and those kinds of things. And the whole process that we would do would also assist in updating the economic development plan that we already did about 4, 5, 6 years ago. As part of all that as well, we did talk about doing a trade area and business gap analysis to kind of figure out where businesses should go, what's missing where, and what would be some of the better places to put them in. And we'd also do some facilitation of up to 2 neighborhood meetings, community meeting type things. And we also look at maybe doing an economic development positioning and vision forum, which would be open to the public. To try to get some buy-in, find out how they see and perceive the future of Wendell. And that also helps create goals and planning for budgets and just where you want to go, and help provide a vision, just that, set of goals that you want to accomplish over the next number of years. Again, all of that can be done. At the end of the day, you would have a report and some work recommendations, goal recommendations, things that you can do in the first year or two that, sort of the quote-unquote low-hanging fruit, as they call it, to get some things done and to plan for. And some of that might even be already in the existing strategic plan, but there may be some other things that we've developed since then as well, so looking forward. So that's sort of the nuts and bolts version of it. The cost is in materials and mileage. My office is in Clayton, so the mileage isn't that big. You wouldn't actually have to feed me. I would have somebody else here to help with the one-day assessment. And the person I'm thinking of lives in Raleigh, so we wouldn't even have to put up for lodging or anything like that. So our labor costs are paid for by the state already. You're already paying for that to your taxes. So it's a relatively inexpensive proposition with a lot of good information and some real benefit for the future of Wendell. So we just would need to have a memorandum of understanding signed by the town manager and a resolution signed or approved, adopted by the board.
Okay.
What this helps staff and your manager do is it helps take the policy vision that I've heard individually from y'all. It takes a couple dated documents with the comp plan and the economic development plan. It kind of updates that into some actionable items that we can get going on in the short term, and provides that guidance document to get that going now, rather than updating the complete comp plan or going through a complete planning process. I know there's some immediate needs we need to move on because the market's not going to wait for us on some of those. So this provides us the forum to get to that actionable outcomes that I've heard from each of you that we need to achieve within our local economy.
Does anyone have any questions? Comments? I think it sounds like a no-brainer. I think it's something we need to do right away.
Just commend staff on it. This is going to be awesome.
Yeah.
And theoretically will give us plans that we can refer to, so we're making decisions in the future, we can look at a plan. Since that's the building blocks.
So keep us on task. Okay, so do we have a motion to?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to authorize the town manager to sign the memorandum of understanding with the Department of Commerce.
All right, we have a motion to authorize the town manager to sign the memorandum of understanding. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Great, thank you. All right, number 9 is a review and approval of an amendment of the Downtown Facade Grant Program for the use of downtown revitalization funds. Mr. Bergmark?
Thank you, Mayor, members of the board. So, the item that brought Mr. Nagel to us to speak tonight was, as you recall, the NC Commerce grant that we received, and we kind of allocated 5,000 of that already, and that left 45,000, and staff came to you with a proposal of giving kind of first priority of those funds to an expanded facade grant program that would kind of be a matching grant for, up to $10,000, partnership between us and private property owners or business owners with property owner consent. And the review process kind of went through the similar process as our existing facade grant program did in terms of review by the Appearance Commission, approval by the town board. We've had some more recent discussions with developers that are interested in our downtown, and we realized that we might have an opportunity to do a little bit more than we were originally thinking in terms of this $10,000 matching cap. And so we wanted to come before you and ask, rather than looking at 5 small projects, if through this policy document, if we had the flexibility to be able to open this up, if we had more of a home run type project where we could go beyond the 10,000, where we could look at something that would be, could be a combination of external improvements and internal improvements. If we had the opportunity to take one of our more, premier buildings downtown and have somebody invest substantial sums into it, if we could go beyond kind of what that original scope was. And so we just see this as an opportunity to open this up a little bit more. And this really is just like I said, it's a policy document. It's just kind of laying out an intent. Anything would have to, of course, be reviewed and approved by you, but we'd want to make it available to a larger, more exciting project if the opportunity arose, which it may be arising. So that's what we're asking for you tonight for input on.
If this is a direction that the board decides to go in, I hope that what I'd like us to consider, as far as the interior improvements, things that would stay with the building should the business fail. We did that with the outside things. If you recall, we don't cover signage, we don't pay for awnings if you put your name on it, things like that, so that we're making upgrades to the building that will stay there. You don't want to think about it this way, but even with the improvement in the economy, times are tough, and everybody doesn't make it. And I would not want to spend that money and then walk out the door when a business failed. So I'd like it to be things that stay with the building. Does that make sense?
Yeah, so not, kitchen equipment or something
Right,
that
but
might
I
be
would maybe think about a grease trap, because that stays.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? So there's a difference. So, does anyone else have any comments or questions about it?
Well, Dave, does the Economic Development Committee or you guys have anything in the horizon? Is that why y'all chose to kind of remove this cap or change the plan? Is there something on the table? Well, and that's fine if you can't talk about it. To me, $10,000, and I missed the meeting, I guess it's been about 2 months, month and a half, 2 months ago when we talked about this, but, to me, it seems like a lot of taxpayers' dollars to subsidize to a business, especially with limited criteria. I'm okay with going above the 10,000 if there's more criteria, saying we're not gonna pay it out at one time, we're gonna pay it out once the business has been here for 24 months or whatever the case might be. Just not a big fan of paying these kind of tax dollars to subsidize a business that may not make it.
So the way this is crafted now is that the larger grant amounts would only be eligible for projects of significant impact based on matches greater than 1-to-1, demonstration of increased property value, job creation, and/or prominent location. So they're gonna have to be able to demonstrate that there's the return on investment for that taxpayer investment is significant. While there isn't a specific project that's been submitted at this time, there have been inquiries that would be substantial investments to improve downtown. And so we want to make sure that the grant funding is flexible enough that it can be responsive to the scale of the project that's submitted. And so if someone still wants to do, you know, a replacement of an awning out front or repaint a building, then this still does that. But it gives the flexibility that if that larger project comes in, that the commission has already shown a willingness to hear that case and listen to what that return on investment, and then you as a commission can decide whether or not that's worthy of that larger amount.
Does that answer your
Yes.
questions and concerns?
I'm also a big proponent of clawbacks and not paying out money until after they've delivered on a result. And so typically, somebody has expended the funds, demonstrated a return on investment, and gets the funding, and there's, you know, typically you can work out some kind of a development agreement in which they are required to pay back a certain amount if they fail to meet certain achievable goals. That can be part of any discussion on a larger project. And often those may involve things beyond just a facade grant program to achieve a desired outcome.
Any other questions, comments?
I think this is an excellent use of both the facade grant program and the dollars allocated for it. I did want to highlight, since we're talking about taxpayer dollars, that this didn't come out of our normal operating budget. This is grant dollars from the state that we're appreciative of. And if staff is best positioned to make a lot of those decisions in my mind, especially since it's going to follow the normal process and come back to us. So I would certainly encourage us to be as creative as we can with this once, you know, this opportunity, because it may not represent itself in future budgets.
Yeah, I was
I hope that we develop a program out of this that we continue to implement in our future budgets. I hope that we come up with something that we fund going forward. But we got a one-time shot, and I would hate to see us not be flexible and hamper something that could have been really good. So I would lean towards flexible on this one, specifically because of the way the funds are, what they're targeted for.
Yeah, I agree. I was one of the ones who kind of motioned last, to cut out some of the facade grant funds, but with the grant coming in, the Commissioner Joyner worked hard to kind of help us obtain, and then dangling the bigger bait in front of a bigger fish would be nice, and I think the flexibility would be good to have for right now. So I'll make a motion to amend the downtown facade grant program to provide funding flexibility for greater projects or greater impact.
All right, so we have a motion to approve the amendment to the downtown facade grant program. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor? Great. All right, item number 10 is authorization to establish a planner one position in the planning department. Mr. Bergmark?
So thank you, Mayor, members of the board. I don't know if this is a great night to bring this up or, or the worst night to bring this up. We've gone through a lot tonight, but I think it kind of highlights the need, even though it's now at a late hour, so I'll try to make this brief. You know, I'm here before you, and I thank the manager for allowing me the opportunity to kind of make a case for another position. This has been something that, you know, shouldn't be totally out of the blue for you. I have made requests before, but I think now we're really seeing the need hit us, and it's seeing it impact our performance, and not just me kind of planning for what I think we're going to need, but now the need is here very much so. So tonight, again, I'm asking for your consideration of a mid-year authorization to add a planner one position to the department. We're seeing steady increases in both permit and site plan workload. And you probably get some of this data, but, you know, we've already had over 300 new homes so far this year permitted, and that's just new home permits, not considering other trade and commercial permits. Similarly, our site plan numbers are going up, you know, more than we did last year, or more than we did the year before that, and well more than we had in previous years, considering. And frankly, we're falling behind, and we don't want to be the obstacle. You know, there are processes that need to be followed, of course, and we are a regulatory agency, but when we're falling weeks behind in permitting, that doesn't make a good case for Wendell, and so it's something that I see us needing to address. We are, you know, Wyatt is retiring. I just started today doing interviews for a new permit technician position, but beyond that, if you think about when I got here in 2008, there were a director and 2 planners under that director. And that's no longer the case. So we're less, from a planner standpoint, we're at a lower capacity now than when I got here 10 years ago. And the workload is definitely more than when I got here 10 years ago. So I think there's definitely a need for this. If we can get ahead of the budget, that puts us at a little bit of an advantage for it, because other people are going to be adding positions with that budget. So anytime you can get a mid-year, you're at a little bit of an advantage compared to everyone else in this area that's asking, and there's going to be a lot of people asking, because we're experiencing, it's not just us, this area is receiving so much growth. So we're hoping this position could help out not just with site plan review, but could also help out with permitting, you know, when needed, could take, frankly, a few things off of my plate so I can really do a better job being a supervisor, because a lot of the things I just kind of carried with me when I got promoted. And I'm doing I spent last week in a leadership training, and I'm thinking, oh yeah, that's great, and I'm thinking, when am I going to have time to implement these things that I'm learning? To give you a little bit more numbers, information, the planner one position has a starting salary range of $47,875. You know, add on, you know, almost $8,000 for benefits depending on the salary. The actual cost of that will, of course, depend on the hiring rate and when we fill the position if this were approved. If you looked at, for example, a February 1st, 2019 starting date, then the cost would be approximately $23,500. You know, we're asking that the position be funded from fund balance reserves during the end of this budget year amendment, if sufficient revenues are not received above the budget to cover the expense, and then it would be budgeted for and paid for with recurring revenue funds moving forward beyond that. There are some, of course, ancillary expenses for technology, office supplies, and so forth, but that would be provided from existing budget lines, and it would be located here in the town hall within existing vacant office space that we have. I'd be happy to, like I said, go into more justification or more answer any questions you may have, but again, I think this is a need, and it's not a need that's going to go away.
If I can add just a couple points. I'm not one that adds positions mid-year lightly. This is a choke point for process in our organization right now. It'd be nice with all this economic activity if we had somebody who could handle the economic development requests that are coming in, deal with the downtown issues, help proactively annex and get commercial development to occur in the community. I can't ask for that position right now because there's a choke point in planning. We're unable to process what we're getting now, and adding more work to that choke point is not going to resolve that. So this helps a place that is a choke right now on our local economy. The second is the timing. I'd much rather prefer and ask for positions in next year's budget. But to have this person on board and trained in the new Wake County permitting system and ready for the next building cycle in spring, we need to make the decision now to get that position process started. So that's why it's here before you. Our revenues are tracking to be able to cover this expense. As y'all know probably more than I do, your revenues are exceeding expenses year over year. With the growth that's occurring within our community, that's definitely happening within this business section of the city. I reviewed our four-month progress, and we are tracking ahead of revenues over expenses. That would cover the entire cost of this at this point, not knowing what comes up between now and the end of the fiscal year, of course. But if you have any other questions, Dave and I are both here. Management supports the department request.
And I would add, you know, you're seeing the South Hollywood Road project come before you, which is, you know, one of our first brand new developments of a larger size we've seen in a while. But we're getting, in terms of people that are inquiring about properties, we're getting tons of calls, tons of interest right now for multiple sections along New York Road, along Wendell Falls Parkway, New York Park, along Jake May Drive, you know, up on Wendell Boulevard, heading out up towards Zebulon. So there's a lot of interest right now, so it's not slowing.
To be able to be more proactive and respond to some of the concerns that you heard in the hearings today, planning staff needs to have the time to do due diligence and follow up with engineering and other areas, and then get back with the community on these areas. If we don't have staff resources committed to do the work, things will start slipping, and they're slipping right now.
Are there any other questions?
Madam Mayor, I make a motion to approve the request authorization to add planner one position effective January 1st, 2019.
All right, we have a motion to approve and establish a planner one position in the planning department. Is there any discussion on the motion? All in favor?
Aye.
Item number 11 is a snapshot.
Staff is advancing some of your strategic initiatives regarding water and sewer projects. We anticipate having a water main project schedule and timing out to you in the next week. We received that first draft of notice to proceed for the first part of that project today from City of Raleigh.
Okay, thank you. Does anyone have any comments? We'll move on to number 12. Item number 12 is an update by board committees by town board members. East Wake Senior Center, Auxiliary, Commissioner Myrick.
Madam Mayor, the Senior Center wanted the town to know that they have won the Senior Center of the Year from the North Carolina Senior Center Alliance, and they will be having an award banquet on Thursday that I will be attending along with you.
Yeah, I will. All right, thank you very much. Triangle J Council of Governments Board of Delegates, Mayor Pro Tem Lutz.
At our last meeting, Dave did a recap of the regional summit that occurred back in September, and just the highlights of that, and then adopted bylaws for the new Triangle J Regional Corporation.
that all? Thank you.
Yes, ma'am.
Wendell Fire Board, Commissioner Joyner.
Fire department reviewed their budget as normal and, nothing else.
I attended the Triangle J Council of Governments, county chairs and mayors. We had an executive roundtable discussion about transit and transportation investments in this region. You know, I have a bee in my bonnet about this. It mostly covers things that don't directly impact Wendell or citizens of Wendell, except when we get taxed on it. But they do impact us when we travel outside of town and around the area daily for work or pleasure and so forth. So we can look at it that way. We heard about transit investments in the region, light rail. There's going to be 6 miles of bridges. That's one of the larger expenses. Saw mock-ups of the stations and heard plans to connect NC State, UNC, North Carolina Central, City of Durham, City of Raleigh all together. Some of those stations will be adapted with specifics to those areas and you know, I've designed to be aesthetically pleasing in the areas that they are, and especially I assume the ones on the college campuses. Next, we heard what's going on in the entire region, kind of a big look looking down. They are finalizing their 2045 plan so that they'll be eligible for federal funding. And they're also creating constant updates from evaluations that they're making of roads and highways like 40, 540, et cetera, to be sure that they're meeting the needs of citizens with the volume of traffic. They're considering the possibility of tolls in the future in various places, doing study to examine that possibility. And they said to be aware that there are a lot of projects that were approved some time ago that are finally going to be done by the DOT. Apparently the DOT has moved a lot of things up. So you're going to notice a lot of road work in the next bit in the area. And they're going to send me an email soon and with a lot more information and some specifics, and I'll forward that to you when I get that. In fact, I checked again this afternoon and had not received it yet. And the rest of the board, if y'all are interested. All right. Item number 13, Commissioners' Reports. Commissioner Joyner.
There's a ton of events upcoming, and if I tried to list any of them, I would forget at least half of them. So I would just say there's a ton of events coming up. Look at the town's Facebook page, and then look at the Wendell Wonderland and other Facebook pages, because there's lots of fun stuff coming up. And I'm going to be very brief because my pastor's in the back, and I know he's looking at his watch. We got to quit talking at each other, and we got to quit making every issue like it's the last line in the sand that the world's going to end if the other side wins. I felt like we did that a lot until last Tuesday. I feel like we're continuing to do it as a society. But when you think about it, if we start talking about what we want to do and what we want to achieve, or why we want a project to succeed, or why we don't want a project to succeed, we're going to get to the solution a lot quicker than talking at each other and talking over each other. So I'd again reiterate, like, I want to talk to people. I want to hear what people's feedback is. Please call me. Please reach out to me. It's on the website, but I'm readily available. I want to hear your feedback, but I think that we have to be really careful about our tone, especially as we're going to continue to grow. This isn't the first development. It's not going to be the last development. And this development in particular is not what I'm talking about. As a community and as we grow, we're going to have to learn to work together across the lines to figure out what's best for that area, and coming into a solution with nothing. If you bring nothing to the table on either side, you're not really working in good faith. And I'd like to get back to a place where we're working in good faith. Thank you, Madam.
Commissioner Boyette.
You couldn't be more wrong about all that stuff. I'm just kidding. I just want to say happy birthday to my little sister.
That it?
I won't mention her name. She knows who she is.
All right. Commissioner Myrick.
Nothing tonight, ma'am.
Commissioner Lutz.
Nothing tonight, ma'am.
Commissioner Carroll.
Nothing tonight, Mayor.
All right, well, I've got a few things I want to talk about. This has been a busy time. There've been lots and lots of field trips. I think it's where school has started and kids are in school just long enough that they've, been anxious to come to the town of Wendell, and interestingly, other towns are doing the same now, so we're being leaders again. First one that I want to mention is the second grade from East Wake Academy came here, and they were doing a school field trip it had a science component and a geography component. And they learned from the Public Works about how to clear the streets with snow and ice and salt and things like that, and that's about second grade level. They were real cute, and they climbed all through the stuff, and they mostly liked to blow the horn. And then they did a geography lesson where they left from there and they went all over town. They had maps and they had directions, and they had to go north, south, east, west, and they had to find landmarks on the map. And so it was kind of like a scavenger hunt, and they were all over town with all their parents. So it was a fun morning, and I had several people call me and ask me what were all the people with sheets of paper went downtown. So that was fun. The next field trip was our annual third grade Wendell Elementary School town board meeting. We held it at Wendell Elementary School this year due to the rain because they couldn't walk over here. It's always fun. They learn a little bit too. We discussed the budget, backyard chickens, the tobacco worm mural. Kids say funny things. They were all in favor of a splash pad, and the voting members that were chosen of the board did not pass the budget because there was no splash pad in the budget. So that group has not adopted a budget yet. And one other thing I think is kind of funny, apparently they get to ask questions, of course, after it's all over, and apparently I'm as old as some of their grandmothers. So there's that. But I'm really rich, I make a lot of money being the mayor. So I guess that offsets being old. The last field trip was the third grade for East Wake Academy invited me to come over and talk about municipal government. And I went over there, and they were currently studying that, and they had prepared questions that their teacher had given them on little cards. So I looked out, and none of them asked me how old I was on that one. So I dodged the bullet that day. The treat trail we had this year was highly successful, even with bad weather, so I want to thank the Parks and Rec staff. They spent a whole lot of time working on that, and then a whole lot of time redoing it at the very last moment on the last day to get it inside. It was still very successful and well attended, and I appreciate that. There was a period of time since our last meeting that we had 3 ribbon cuttings in 5 days. Cruisers on Wendell Falls Parkway, Turnip Seed Nature Preserve, and the Eastern Wake EMS station, Wendell, Maine, all opened within just a few days of each other. These are all really good things and signs of progress and things to come. I'm real pleased that these kinds of things are happening and to be able to participate in that on your behalf. One other thing I want to mention is that the Appearance Commission here, in addition to the big event that they do in the spring, they hold numerous fundraisers throughout the year so they can do beautification projects for us. They don't get hardly any money in their budget for that. They raise the money for all the murals and things that you see around town. And they had an event called the Trick or Trot 5K, and I wanted to thank Wendell Falls for partnering with them because Wendell Falls honestly did the lion's share of the work. We did a little bit of planning on it here, the committee did, and then the committee was out there and participated that day. But I really appreciate that, and all the money that was earned that day goes to the Appearance Commission for more beautification projects. So it's wonderful to have such great corporate partners in Wendell Falls and Newland communities. And the last thing that I want to tell you is that the Wendell Rams have 2 out of their 3 teams competing this weekend in Super Bowl at Durham County Stadium. And my husband and I are going to go and cheer them on, and I fully anticipate having both teams here in a few weeks to congratulate them and recognize them for their efforts when they win. So that's all of that, and now I need a motion to go into closed session.
Madam Mayor, make a motion to go into closed session pursuant with North Carolina General Statute 143-318.11.5 regarding land acquisition.
So we have a motion to go in closed session. All in favor?
Aye.
All right.
Already on the door.
trying to get some church bells, Wallace? That's right. Just make sure Hotel California makes it on there. All right.
Hey, boss. I spoke to you sooner today, didn't I, about the meeting length? Well, usually about an hour and a half.
Hey, nice to see you.